Ladies and gentlemen, High Spots fans, wrestling fans, welcome to another edition of our interview series. Today we are being joined by Bobby Lashley. Bobby, thank you for coming all the way down from Colorado to High Spots here in Charlotte and doing this interview for us.
My pleasure.
Okay, well, how about we start off a little bit about your background growing up, what your home life was like, how'd you get involved with sports growing up and stuff?
Okay. My dad was in the Army, so we traveled all over the place. My family's from Panama, so my dad joined the U.S. Army, so he brought us over to the United States, and that's when he started having me and my kid. I have 3 older sisters. I was born in North Carolina, actually. I was born in Fort Bragg, and we traveled all over the place. We went in Kansas for a while, and then I lived in Germany for about 4 years. And I was just one of those kids that just ran around. I played sports. I played a little bit of everything. And I got into wrestling. I got into amateur wrestling when I was in the 7th grade. And I got into that because after playing football, they didn't have anything else for us to do. So my football coach was a wrestling coach, and he told me to come out and try out wrestling. I tried out wrestling, and the rest was history.
Okay, so did you primarily just do wrestling in high school, or was it like once you got into wrestling, was that all your focus, or did you just kind of do other sports, or just?
Yeah, well, I played football. I played football, but for me, I hit growth spurts really late. Like when I was a freshman, I wrestled 112 in high school, and I weighed 110 pounds. So I was a starting running back. I was fast, but I was tiny. And that's why I kind of gravitated towards wrestling, because I could actually beat up people my own size, as opposed to being on the football field and having these guys that were 200-something pounds, and I was just a little skinny, scrawny guy. After that, I was just growing. I pretty much put on about 20 pounds a year after that. And I really didn't start putting on to real size until actually after I got out of college. Because in college I wrestled 184, and then when I was at the Olympic Training Center, I actually got up and my weight started moving up, and I was weighing about 220, 230, and I was wrestling 211.
Okay. Well, talk about your credentials that led you to get to college. Like, were you state champion?
Yeah. My freshman year, I wrestled varsity. Kind of rocky road because it was new to me being in a big league. My sophomore year, that's when I started wrestling freestyle and Greco, and I won freestyle state and Greco state as a sophomore. And then my junior year in high school, I took second in high school state, and then I won freestyle and Greco again. And then my senior year, I won high school state, and I took first in freestyle and Greco again.
Okay, well,
and then from there, I got a scholarship and went on to Missouri Valley.
Okay, how big of a school was Missouri Valley?
It's a smaller college, but our wrestling team was really tough. When I first came in, we had one national champion. I was the second national champion, and then when I was there, our team won nationals twice. My sophomore and junior year, and I won nationals my sophomore, junior, and senior year. Okay.
Now going from college, how do you end up at the Olympic Training Center? Like, how does that all happen?
It was just one of those things. I took 4th my freshman year. I won sophomore, junior, senior year. After I remember coming off the mat after my senior year, my coach just kind of looked at him and I said, what's next? That was the whole thing, what's next? And he was like, well, it just depends on where you want to go. I graduated college and I went to St. Louis and I took just a regular job. I thought I was just going to be a regular person. I got a job as a sports coordinator. It's a good job. I dealt with all the sports and kids programs and softball and baseball, everything for the league. So I was putting everything together. I liked the job, but I just still had something left. My coach called me up, asked me to come out. I went to U.S. Open, a big wrestling tournament, and I did well for not even training for it. So he's like, you need to kind of further your wrestling and see how far it can take you. And from there, I talked to the Army wrestling coach. I ended up going into the Army, and I ended up wrestling for the Army team. And my station was pretty much to stay at the Olympic Training Center. I was in a program called the World Class Athlete Program. So I stayed at the wrestling at the Olympic Training Center, trained the entire time, and then wrestled.
Okay, well, while you were at the training facility, did they bring in any famous Olympians that came in? Was there anybody that came
Kurt?
through?
Kurt was there, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that like? Did you get to roll around with him a little bit?
No, you know what? He was actually coming to do a vignette for the WWE, and I knew Kurt because I had watched Kurt when I was in high school. I was watching him win his national championship, and I watched him go on to the Olympics. So I was kind of a fan of his before going into pro wrestling, and then when he went into pro wrestling, I followed his career after that also because I was always a pro wrestling fan. I watched growing up, and then when Kurt went into it, I was like, oh, this is really cool. So he came out of nowhere. He came to Olympic Training Center, and he was doing some kind of vignette. So he was working out with some guys, and then after practice, Kurt came by and he was like, "Hey man, you ever think about doing pro wrestling?" And I was like, "It's like, man," I said, I watch pro wrestling, but I never really thought about doing it." He said, "You got a good look, you have a good build, let me put you in touch with some people and let's just see if there's anything there."
Well, that's kind of odd, just him to pick you out of a crowd. I'm sure there's other guys that probably, he could have picked anybody, but did he just sense that you were a wrestling fan?
Not as good looking as me.
Oh, well, of course.
No, we were in practice, and then after practice, we had, you're going live and everything, so everybody's sweaty, you take your shirts off and everything like that. So he looked at me and he was like, "Man, you had a good build," and we were playing around and he saw what I was doing out there, and I had my accolades in wrestling, and we were battling, and I didn't actually get to go with Kurt, but he saw me wrestling other guys, and he was like, "Man, you might want to look into this."
Now, when he said I could put you in touch with some guys, who were those guys that he mentioned?
The first person I talked to was Briscoe, Jerry Briscoe. He called me up, and he was like, "Hey, Kurt said some good things about you. We'd be interested in kind of bringing you up, maybe talking to you a little bit more." And at the time, it was a rocky time for me because it was in 2003, I think it was. So 2004 was the Olympics. So at that time, I was like, I've been training for 20 years. I got to kind of keep going on this path. So I kept in touch with Briscoe a little bit, and then had a big tournament over the summer, and still talking to him around that time. And then we kind of lost contact. I went to the World Team Trials. I did really well at the World Team Trials, and then that's when the whole bank robbery incident happened. And
well, let's speak on that because I was going to ask about that because I read it on your Wikipedia page and I was like, this must be one of those crazy stories they put into people's profiles, but apparently it's true. So please explain it to me.
This story, it's a crazy story. Okay, after World Team Trials, we had a little break. I took third, but it was like a true second, so I was like number 2 on the ladder, number 2, 3 on the ladder. So coming in 2004, I was like, everything's rolling, have an opportunity to possibly make the Olympic team, so I was ready to go. We had a couple of weeks off, and I was personal training at Bally's at the time, and for some reason, a client didn't show up, so I went to the bank, and when I walked into the bank, so I'm walking into this bank, I see these guys out there, I'm a people person. I kind of nod at them, "Hey, what's up?" Walk inside the bank, got some money out of the ATM, and as soon as I walked into the line, so it was like all the tellers were up in front, and it was like kind of like a half circle, and everybody was standing in line. As soon as I walked in, I stood in the back of the line. Not more than a second after I stood there, I heard boom, boom, and then all I know is I took a dive down to the ground. What had happened? These guys came in, they kicked the door down, and he aimed the gun and he just fired when he was coming in. Now, I was standing in the back of the line, and I know this story because after they found the guys, I had an opportunity to look at the surveillance camera, so I saw everything that was going on. The guy took a shot, I took a dive down to the ground, and all I can remember is I was down on the ground, my head was down on the ground, and I was like just completely tense, and the whole side of my face was burning, my head was burning, I couldn't see out of my eyes, so I was just kind of like blinking a bunch. I thought he shot me. When I looked at the surveillance cameras, the guy wasn't not more than 5-6 feet away from me, had the gun pointed straight towards my head, and he was pulling the trigger, and for some reason I went like this. So when it shot, the bullet went straight forward and it hit the wall as I'm going like that, so it just basically went right over my shoulder. I took a dive down to the ground, and I was down on the ground, and I was like, the only thing I was thinking, I was like, man, everything that I've been through, because I grew up with nothing. So I actually made something out of myself, winning championships, graduating college and making it to this level. And then here's my goal of making it to the Olympics. It's a year away, and I'm this close, seeing from the last tournament. And then all this is happening. So I'm down on the ground, and then my hearing started coming to. And when my hearing started coming to, this guy shoots again. He's shooting at this other lady that was sitting behind the counter, I guess, because he saw her hand go down. So he shot at her. She moved out of the way. This old lady had a heart attack. There was completely chaos in there. And then after some time, the guys end up leaving. When I got up, my knee was about this big. It was just huge. It had swole up. And what happened, it was just like one of the industrial carpets. So when I hit the ground, I landed on the concrete, and just my knee just blew up. So I went to the hospital after that. They looked at my knee. They said I completely ruptured my bursa, and so they drained it a couple times. They tried to ice it, but it wasn't going down. It was inflamed. It was terrible. They said I had a little tear in my meniscus from hitting the ground. So I had a surgery. So I had to go into surgery. This is a year before the Olympics. And leading up to the surgery, the guy, I talked with my doctor, and he was like, he said, you know, if we go in there and everything's smooth, you might be okay to make it. You might be out for 4 months maybe. Olympic trials was in 8 months. So I was like, all right, do the 4 months. I said, you know, the normal person's 4 months, but I'm gonna bust my ass, and I'm gonna be back before that. But he had the surgery. I went home. Extreme pain the entire week. Had to go back to the hospital. They said that something had happened. I had to go to another surgery. After the second surgery, I came out of surgery. I don't know what happened. I think he botched the surgery. I think that's what it was, because they had to drain like 110 cc's of blood and fluid out of my knee because something went wrong with the surgery. So he came back and he said, you know what, your recovery time is at the minimum 8 months. So I'm sitting there, I was like, I wrestled for 18 years, and like that, all of it gone. So I went back, I had the surgery, and then I still had in my mind, I was like, he said 8 months, but I'm going to be back sooner than that. So I had this long leg brace. So I'm sitting in my house with this leg brace on, and I'm just looking at this guy thinking, you know, the fuck, you know, everything that I've been through, and this is this, you know, back to square one. I'm sitting there the whole time with this leg brace on. I went through a couple months, and I couldn't even walk. The first probably 2 or 3 months, I didn't even take a step because I had this brace on. I couldn't bend my knee. My knee was still swollen up. I was doing rehab where I was my whole rehab was just to be able to move my foot like this, because they had to do a tear back here. They had to do all kinds of BS on my knee. But after about 3 months, Briscoe calls again. So I have this leg brace on. I have my leg jacked up on the couch, and Briscoe calls, and he's like, hey, you know, just want to get back in contact with you. We have an opportunity for you to come up to Louisville, man. We'd really like for you to come up here and go through a tryout. Dr. Tom is going to give you a call, and let's set it up. Let's get it going. He said, are you still interested? And I'm looking at my knee saying, yeah, I'm interested. Yeah, of course I'm interested. Give me an opportunity. And he was like, well, can you come next week? And mind you, I haven't took a step in 4 months. So I was like, maybe, you know, I got some things to kind of clean up here. I said, can you give me a little bit more time? He goes, yeah, but you know, this time is events, so, you know, 3-4 weeks. What do you think? I said, if you give me a good 3 weeks, I might be able to do something. And he goes, all right. So rehab just took it to a whole new level the next few weeks, and I went from moving it like 10 degrees to 25 degrees, and now I'm just busting my ass through rehab. But you know, at the same token, I couldn't really do anything. So just went through rehab every day. Just came back, ice, put the brace on, and then went through it. And then the week up, you know, they get on my travel, and this time I still haven't taken a step. I haven't walked at all. So I'm trying to do everything that I can. And I thought the tryout, I thought I was just gonna come up, maybe get interviewed and whatever. But no. The day before going, that's the first day that I actually took a step. I took a step. I walked in rehab, because I was telling the people at rehab, I was doing my rehab at the Olympic Training Center. So I told him, I said, you know, we got to speed this up. And he was like, we're doing all we can. The day before, I got up and I took a step. Got on the flight the next day and had the leg brace on still. When I got to Louisville, because that's where I had my tryout, I took the leg brace off, and I was just walking really, really slow. That's the whole thing, because if I couldn't really bend, couldn't really do anything. met Dr. Tom. I was in the whole setting. You know, we sat on top for a little bit, and then Dr. Tom said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go through a series of drills. The first thing I'm going to teach you how to do is run the ropes. And I just remember my heart was just beating so hard. I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this, but there's no way I'm going to tell them I'm injured, because if I'm injured, then they don't need me. They're not going to. I mean, there's thousands of guys around the world that want to get into this program, so there's no way I'm going to let this thing go. I got in the ring, and sure enough, I just said, fuck it, ran the ropes. And then every day, and you know what, the funny thing is that I did my tryout with Nick Nemeth, with Dolph Ziggler. So me and him were doing it, and then every day after that, we'd go back in the hotel, and I would just like ice my knee to death because I was in excruciating pain. And we had to do it for 4 days. 4 days we're doing like takeovers, we're doing like running the ropes, we're doing headlocks, we're doing all kinds of different things. And I'm just basically just toughing it out and trying not to let him know anything that was going on. So made it through the whole tryout. And then went home, and like the day after I got home, they called me up and offered me a contract. And I was in the Army at the time, but I was actually getting out of the Army because since the doctors had botched the surgery, they medicaled me out because my knee was completely, it was destroyed. Rehabbed my knee. They gave me 3 months before I had to be back for training camp. So for those 3 months, I just rehabbed like crazy and got my knee ready, got my strength back, got ready, got in shape, and then came to Louisville like nothing ever happened.
Wow. Okay, so tryout went well, even with a bad leg.
Yeah.
You got the contract. You're at Ohio Valley Wrestling, and you're trained to wrestle.
Yes.
How was the training there? Who was doing the training?
You know, I there was a couple really cool people. Man, we were at a transition phase, so I was there for about a year and a half. First, it was Simon Dean. He was there training for a little bit, and then it went to Dismore. And then Bill DeMont came down for a while, and Lance Storm. I think Lance Storm was there for the largest time that I was there, the largest amount of time that I was there. Lance Storm was incredible, man.
Yeah, well, how was he? I mean, what did he do that?
I don't know.
It was better than everybody else.
I'm not saying he's better than everybody else.
Or you
I personally believe he was, but I just liked how he worked with everyone. It was like he wanted us to understand the business. I mean, he took a bunch of young kids that were in there, and he said, you know what, there's other things besides just going out there running spots or having the shows. He talked about some of the backstage politics that you have to kind of look into and be wary of. But then, as far as like working matches, his psychology with matches, it made everything so easy. Like when I was down there, I didn't know nothing, you know. And I worked a match with Lance, and it was like I was just pretty much standing there, and it was a great match. So he was just I don't have enough good things to say about Lance. I think he was an incredible person. He was easy to talk to. If we ever had any questions, he was there for us. He pushed us hard. He just kind of came there and he just made us all feel like, you know, we should help each other out instead of stab each other on the back. Because you know how the wrestling business is. Everybody wants to, you know, that there's only one spot there, so we all have to fight for that spot. So you got to get anybody that you can to make there. You got to claw and scrape and stab and kill anybody you have to make it to that spot. But he kind of changed that philosophy. He made us feel like, you know, let's all try to make the show better, and if the show's better, then the office is going to see, and if the office sees, you know, they're going to start picking a lot of us out of there, and which it actually happened. And then as far as writers, man, we had an opportunity to be with Heyman. You know, Cornette was there for the first part of the time, and it was good. We had a great time with Cornette. I think he's a great person. I think he's a great writer. And then when Paul came, Paul just put that whole twist on everything. When Paul was there, I remember when Paul was there, it was like in wrestling, it's like you do your match, you concentrate on your match, and that's all that really matters. You hit the monitors, your match. But man, when Paul was there, it was like everybody was around the monitors the entire time because we were trying to check out all the other angles that were going on. He had so many things going on, and everything made sense. If you had a small part was a big part in the show. The big parts were huge. So, I mean, just little things that he was doing and twisting, and he just incorporated everybody in there. At that time, man, everybody was getting pulled up. Everyone. At the time, I think most of the people that I was there with got put on the road and went on and did something pretty big.
Now, who were some of the people that you hung out with quite a bit? Because it seemed like, you guys are training all the time, you're working out with each other and all that stuff. Who were some of the people that kind of became your friends during that time in Ohio Valley?
I like Joey Matthews. He was a good friend of mine. He lived across the way. Him and Mickey James, she was there. Boogeyman and I became really close. He was my workout partner when I was down there. Who else? I mean, there was a lot of different people that just kind of hung out. We went out as groups. Nick Nemeth, he was right down the street. Well, he was actually in the same apartment complex that I was in, so we hung out a lot. Excuse me. When he came up, Mondo, you couldn't not like Mondo. Mondo was a great guy. He was always kind of like jumping around there. Jillian was there. John Morrison, he was there. Capitelli, Jeter. Beast, he was down there at the time. Matt Morgan. Let's see. I don't want to forget anybody, but I mean, there was a lot of guys down there. Yeah. And everybody's doing something now or did something at the time.
Well, looking back on the results of the Ohio Valley Wrestling, your time there, seems like you spent a lot of time, of course, with Mondo and Ken Doan also, too.
Yep.
How were they to just work with in the ring?
Ken Doan's really good, man. That kid he was just, me and Mondo, we ran a good skit, and I loved working with Mondo because he was so intense. He came out with this deal. He had this whistle. Whenever he came down, he would just blow the whistle because I was a heel at the time. And Paul Heyman came in and took me and Mondo as a team, put us with Ken Doan as the flashy young kid that was all vibrant, and he ran this angle with us that was phenomenal. It was just a phenomenal, because I was this big, just killer heel that was just coming in, just beating people up. I beat up everybody from Mickey James to everybody else in the roster, and he just ran this angle with me and Mondo, and then Ken Doan being this like loudmouth, cocky, arrogant heel, he actually turned me babyface right before I came up. So the way Paul Heyman put it together was just phenomenal. But those guys, I mean, they were so easy to work with. For me, not really coming from the indie scene, I came from like the amateur wrestling scene. To be able to wrestle with some of these guys and work with some of these guys, it made my job a lot easier. I think the last match I worked was with Ken Doan, and I put Ken Doan over after he turned to be babyface. And it was a lot of tension built up in there just off of just looks, and he turned me babyface. We did a big blow-off match right before I ended up going up on the road. But, I mean, those guys were easy. Him, Mondo. Mondo is just an incredible worker, and he loves the business so much, and it shows in every match that he has. So we had a good time. We did tag matches all the time, me and Mondo. And, hell, if I had an opportunity to work with somebody again, Mondo would definitely be one of those people that I would like to work with again, either as a manager, as a heel, as a tag team partner, anything. That guy is really, really good.
Now, you just mentioned that you were there during the transition between Jimmy Cornette and Paul Heyman. Did you remember the slapping incident with Santino at all and Jim Cornette?
I was actually on the road there.
Oh, you were on the road there?
Yeah, I was at the road at that time, but it was because of the Boogeyman, and he had told me about it, and he was like, man, he was freaked out with it because he came from outside the business too, so when he saw it happen, he was like, man, it was crazy, and everybody was talking about it, but I wasn't there, so I can't really speak on that too much.
Well, now you were up on the road like very fast. It seemed like. Did you ever feel like they were pushing so much stuff on you, like, teaching you so like at a faster pace than everybody else? Because it seemed like, because the reason I say that is because the first time I saw a picture of you and found out you were in Ohio Valley Wrestling, I'm like, this guy is going to be their big star in the next 5-6 years. And I'm sure the agents probably saw it, and everybody probably saw, and that was probably the perception, like, this guy's going to be a big deal. And I'm sure a lot of people wanted you to be a big deal,
Yeah.
and they tried to push you in that spot as much as possible. Did you ever feel that way? That, man, maybe I'd like to slow down a little bit and kind of...
No.
Or were you like, let's go?
I was like, let's go. But you know what? Now that I know more about wrestling, and I've been doing indies, a few indies this past year, and since I've been off, I mean, I've done a lot of stuff in Japan and everything like that. So I've worked with a whole bunch of different people. Was I ready? Not at all. But I was just kind of one of those guys that I kept my ears open, and I was I picked up things really easy, and I didn't have an ego. I was willing to learn. I wanted to learn, so I was in there all the time. And then mind you, from where I was before, everything just got pulled away from me. So I always used to say that WWE was my Olympic gold medal, as opposed, and it was it changed my life. So when I was down there, I mean, I worked like crazy when I was down there. I trained my ass off. I was watching tape. I was calling up. I was hanging out with Paul. I consider myself a Heyman guy also, depending if the storyline needs me to be. But I hung out with Bill DeMont. We went out and I just picked their brains. Man, I was a sponge for knowledge. I wanted to learn. So when they were throwing things at me, I was taking it in, and I was ready for it. And then when they put me on the road, I don't think it was so quick that they put me on the road, because I did spend about a year and a half down there. So I had an opportunity to work with a lot of different people. I did a lot of house shows and stuff like that before going on. And then when I got on the road, I was on the road for a few months before they gave me a shot on TV. So was I completely ready? Probably not, but they put me with some great people. I worked with Finley for a long time. I worked with Booker for a long time. I worked with JBL. I worked with Big Show. I worked with Umaga. These people, I mean, putting them over, not so much putting myself down, but anybody could have worked with them at the time. But I learned from those guys, and I people were just feeding me knowledge all the time. Benoit, everybody that I worked with was feeding me knowledge. So when I was up there, I felt comfortable. And then when I got my groove and I was in there, man, I felt good. I felt like I could work a match with anybody in there.
Well, even your shorter matches you were put in, there were some really good people, like the Nuncios, and even Simon Dean, which Simon Dean was, probably when your
first
match.
Yep.
Kind of talk about that, maybe the nerves with that, and how'd you feel about that? Like, here you went from the small tapings at Ohio Valley to now the big show.
Yeah, I was doing some house shows, and that's all it was. I thought we were all sitting back in the back. Man, can we get a dark match? Are you gonna get a dark match? Let's go check out see what's going on. And I had a dark match. I had a dark match with Jeter one time. Went out there, we had a good match. Johnny Jeter, we had a good match. So came back on the road, and it was kind of one of those deals. You work some of the house shows, and on Monday you come in and it's like, maybe you get another dark match, or go and eat catering and hang out with everybody and meet people. That was all it was. And then somebody came to me and they said, "Hey man, you're on." And I went out there and I was like, "I'm on." I had no idea that they were gonna put me on. And then when they put me on, heart started beating hard, and I was like, "Oh shit, I don't know if I'm ready for this." But then I went over there and I saw that I was with Simon Dean. Of course the nerves are going to be there. Of course, because starting on TV, you're going out there and all eyes on you, the cameras, everything is completely different from a dark match, and it's way different from OVW. However, I'm in there with Simon Dean, so I know that if things get a little sticky or anything like that, I know I'm with somebody. I mean, this is a guy that started teaching me. So, I mean, the only other person that I would have felt more comfortable with would have been Lance Storm, So, having an opportunity to go with Simon Dean, I was like, there is some fear there, but I'm okay. I can make it happen. Let's just play the character that they want, and let's go for it.
Who are some other people that right away that were helping out? You mentioned Benoit, but were there any of the agents that particularly went out of their way to help you or try and help you very off in the beginning when you got on the road?
Yeah, Arn Anderson was. Arn Anderson, Finley, um, Steve Kern. I mean, all of them were. Everybody was really cool. Rick Steamboat. I mean, everybody was. When I went up there, it was like all the agents were really. I guess they were about the team. They understood what was going on. Like I didn't feel like I had any tension with any one of them. If I had any one of them as an agent for one of my matches, it was like I remember Arn was like, yeah, we got some good stuff, you know. And then Finley was just. I tell you, Finley's one of my favorite people in the world. So, whenever I had Finley or Arn or any one of those guys, it was always really cool, man.
Yeah, well, it seemed like maybe that attitude was his sense of like this guy's big money for us and let's get behind him. It seemed like a very team effort. Like you're good for business.
Yeah.
Did you see that there is potential in you down the road in 3 years? I could be a big deal here.
Yeah,
And could you see it and did it feel like that's what they were doing?
Yeah, yeah. And Vince even sat me down and I understood it because, and this is what I have. This is my take on it. Like it or not, wrestling's always portrayed African Americans, black, whatever, however, I don't care what you want to call it. It's always stereotypes, Not all of us are from, ex-prison. We don't have to come and dance. There's all kinds of these stereotypes that are always posed to black wrestlers. And when I came in, I was a little bit different. And that's what Vince sat me down one time. He said, you know what, you're different. He said, because you have this image, but when I sit and talk with you, you're something different, we don't have to use those things. You have a military background, you have a college degree, you're an intelligent guy, you're a great athlete. We don't have to say, you're from the streets. You don't have to come out dance. You don't have to come out this. And I thought that was good because, for me right now, I do a lot of charity work. I own a gym, and I bring a whole bunch of kids in, from the streets and everything like that. And I'm glad that I was able to present myself as opposed to some other character, because I want some of these kids that are coming up to know that you don't have to be that way. You can be yourself. You can be an athlete. You can have a mind. You don't have to have a character. You can just be you as a black athlete. You don't have to bling bling or anything like that, which is it's cool and everything, and I enjoy doing that at times, and I enjoy those different characters. But that's what I like about my character. My character was just me. And I think it was good for minorities growing up to see somebody like me on TV doing something like that in professional wrestling, and it's like, all right, he's just an athlete. That's it, nothing else behind it. So I like the character, and that's what Vince liked about it. And for me, I'm not a loudmouth. I don't talk a lot of shit. I don't do any of that stuff. I'm even keel, man. I'm calm. I think that hurt me a little bit in the business, but that was my character. I was hard hitting because, and that's what it is. I mean, if you come to my gym, if you come spar with me, I beat people up for a living, and I enjoy doing it. But I'm the nicest person you'll ever meet. I'll do anything for anyone, and that's just my nature. But if I have to rough you up, I can rough you up, and I'll do it with a smile on my face. So I think that was the same character that I carried when I was in the WWE.
Survivor Series is one of the bigger pay-per-views, and you had an opportunity to be involved in one of the bigger matches, and you were able to work Kane and Big Show. Now, being a guy of size, I'm sure getting to wrestle or interact with those guys in any way, shape, or form was beneficial to you.
Yeah.
Did you feel that way? That was probably the first time you ever did anything with them. Did they give you any advice or help you out, or how were they in your career?
I got chokeslammed by Kane. That was one of the highlights of my career.
Yeah.
I'm a huge Kane fan, still am. So Big Show. I had a little tiny feud with Big Show there for a little while, but he just kind of let me know. He was the same thing that you're saying right now. He was like, hey, it's your time. So we're gonna do whatever we have to do to make you the man. So let's work together. And Big Show was simple. He gave me a little hard time. There's little things that we had in the ring where some of those guys that would say that in the back, but they would test you a little bit out there in the ring, which I understand, and it was cool with me, and I appreciate that, because it's like you have to be tested, and then just to see if you're gonna pass or not, if you have what it takes. So I mean, with Big Show it was cool, but Kane was just really quiet most of the time. I remember in the Survivor Series, I took the choke slam on the side for him, and that's how I lost, which I had no thought that I was going to be winning that damn thing, or even coming close to winning. So just to be in the ring with all those guys, it was amazing. And I remember at the time I was in there, and we were standing in the ring, and I was there first, and then Ray came out. So me and Ray stand in the ring, and then everybody's interest started coming out. And there for a second, at first I'm in character, I'm looking pissed off, just waiting for them to come down, and then the different interests start coming in, and it went from pissed off to just kind of relaxed, like, and Ray, hey man, quit being a fan. And I was like, oh, all right. I forgot about what was going on here. But you can't not. I mean,
I'm sure those were the people you watched.
Ever.
If you were a fan about that time, it seems like those would have been the guys that you would have been watching.
Everyone, the interest, it was just like, just jaw dropping. So it was. I mean, it's a show, man. There's no show like it. So.
Well, you mentioned him a little bit before with Finley, but like how helpful was he to you on the road? Like, you had a lot of matches with him.
Yeah.
And what are some of the pieces of advice that, he might have gave you that's really stuck with you throughout your career?
He was one of those guys that taught you in the ring. And I seen Finley a couple times have a match with some of the guys, and on the house shows, it was like they started the match. He started right at the beginning. And he's not going to tell you when to take over. If you don't take over, the match is done. And I've seen him do that to several different people. And I had a match with Finley one time, and it was on TV. Me and Finley I think it was one of our very first matches. And I saw that I was with him, so I'm ready. I was like, I worked with him a couple times before, and I was like, oh, this is going to be cool, man, because I have a lot of respect for Finley, and this is just going to be a great match. And he sees us, and he's just playing cool, just walking around backstage. He comes by me, he goes, hey, man, you ready? And I was like, yeah. So I'm thinking, let's chat, let's get something together. And he walks off, and I was like, all right. Sit back, and I was like, all right, I'm playing cool. I've worked with him before, and I know he doesn't like to, speed. He doesn't like spot matches. He's not about that. So I was like, all right, it's cool. It gets closer to showtime. Now it's like probably an hour before showtime. We haven't talked. We haven't said anything. He was in catering, joking around. I was just hanging out too. And then it's like right before the match, and he's like, you like to do that standing suplex, right? I was like, yeah. I'll do anything that you want. He's like, all right. And then he walks off. I was like, all right, this is not going to be good, man, because I'm kind of nervous. This is on TV, so I need a little bit. Let's put together some of this stuff. He goes, yeah, we're probably finished with the spear. And I was like, yeah, shit, whatever you want to do, a spear or a running power slam. He said, all right, we'll do one of the two. That was it. Then show starts. We're on TV. His music plays. He comes over. He's like, good luck out there, young man. And he walks out, and I'm sitting back, and I was like, what the hell am I supposed to be doing, So I come out there, and I'm like, all right, I'm just going to play with it and see whatever happens, I come out, I jump up on the ring, and I'm going up. He's in the corner, he's just doing his stuff. Pulls ropes. Ding, 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 they ring the bell. I'm standing in the corner. He just walks over to me, and he's like, you motherfucker. And he's like, just cussing, you think you're going to... And I was like... thinking like, what's going on? And he just looked at me, you're going to disrespect somebody like me, and just whack on, slaps me in my face. And this is on TV, so slaps me in my face, and I kind of came back, and I just, boom, grabbed him, threw him into the corner, wow, beat him, boom, stomped him all the way down, beat him all the way down to the ground. He comes selling out, he says, do it now, boom, held him up into the standing suplex, and then he went out. The thing with Finley that he likes to do is he likes to make you react, and that's what he told me after the match. He was like, if I would have told you to do something out there, then it would have came across as like we're planning out spots. He said, I wanted you to react. So when he came up and slapped me in my face, it was kind of like one of those deals. I looked back at him. Either I'm just going to stand there like a little bitch and get slapped, or I'm going to react to it. And that's when I reacted to it. And then we just went through with the match. And then I just stayed on him. And he's smart enough. He's amazing in the ring. So when it was time for him to cut me off, he cut me off went home. We went to the heat for a little while, and then when it was time to go home, it was no problem. And I did that with him. Booker was like that. JBL was like that. So a lot of the guys that I had to work with, they weren't spot guys. They were like, hey, let's just go out there and make it happen. And they can feed with the crowd. And if you can listen to them, then it's easy that way. So, I mean, but I had some of those guys where we went out there and it was like, yeah, you want to have a match a certain way. You want certain things to happen. So, you know how it is when you wrestle. There's guys that like it this way. There's guys that like it that way. I was fortunate enough to be with a lot of the guys that liked it. Just go out there and work. Umaga, I mean, rest his soul. I mean, he's phenomenal. Probably one of the greatest heels that I had an opportunity to work with. And he was like that also. I knew what he liked to do. So we just went out there and did it. Same with Booker. I knew what he liked to do. He liked to be really aggressive, liked to be really stiff. Regal, I worked with him for a long time. He wasn't about putting everything together and writing it down, and no. So a lot of the guys that I worked with just kind of went out there and went with the flow. And to me, I was so into it. Shit, I was a fan. I was a fan all over again when I had an opportunity to work with some of these guys.
Well, as a wrestling fan, I'm sure being in your first WrestleMania was probably a big deal. Can you kind of take me through WrestleMania 22, where you're in the Money in the Bank?
Yeah, the Money in the Bank match. I'm
sure you had to talk about that one a little bit more than the Finlay match.
Yeah, but there was a lot of people that had a lot of stuff going on, and I felt like, you know what, it was a complete honor to be in that match, but I understood the focus wasn't really on me on that match. I had nothing to really do with it. They wanted to show Sheldon go crazy and show his little athleticism, and the story was basically on everyone else, and I was just kind of one of those people that were put in there because I was one of the people that they were pushing at the time. So it was good. It was definitely an eye opener, and then the whole gala of WrestleMania itself, you know, from the Hall of Fame ceremony and just being there at the hotel with all the fans and meeting all kinds of different people throughout the week, and then just going out there in front of that crowd. It was I mean, without stealing anybody else's word, I mean, it was electrifying, like they would say, man. It was incredible going out there. But like I said, I mean, the focus wasn't really on me. I was just kind of a pawn in the game at the time, so I went out there and did what I had to do and rolled out when it was time to roll out.
Also, another big deal, I'm sure, as a wrestling fan, is you got to work a Saturday Night Main Event with Booker T. What was that like? Because, you know, a lot of people, especially of my generation, that's how they got exposed to it. Wrestling was the Saturday Night Main Events. They came back during your time. I mean, you're getting on broadcast television. You know, there's probably people that don't normally see the cable show, but they happen to see this, you know, at some point in time. I know it's a little bit different now that it's, you know, people have DVDRs and stuff like that, and everybody has cable, but, you know, you're on NBC. You know, what's that like?
Man, you know what? I tell you what, when you're like, my career in the WWE was such a crazy roller coaster, man. It happened so fast. It felt like I was in there and out of there so quick. And there was so many huge things that happened at the time, and so many great people that I worked. When I did that with Booker, it was to me, it was just another big step, another big pay-per-view. It just seemed like it just all just kind of went together. I mean, if we talk about some of the bigger matches I had with Booker, I would say it was probably King of the Ring was probably the bigger match for me. But I mean, that match, of course, was a big match, and working with Booker was just a simple time. You know, that match probably wasn't one of the ones that stuck out in my head more than some of the other ones, but like I said, man, so many things happened in such a short period of time that some things really stood out and some things just kind of went in there in the mix with everything else.
Well, much like a roller coaster. There's highs and then there's lows. As the company, uh, you during your time, they lost Eddie Guerrero and Chris Benoit.
Yeah.
Can you kind of just tell me how those locker room vibes and how that affected the company and the locker room in general, just losing those two guys?
Yeah. We were about to go on tour somewhere. I can't remember where it was. Where was Eddie? But I saw Eddie the night before, and he came up to me. And Eddie was always, man. We were just saying it just like right before Eddie, because for me, I was still in the locker room thinking I was still in the locker room as a fan, even though I was on the show. I was still a fan. So with Eddie Guerrero, every time when I saw Eddie, it was like, this is Eddie Guerrero, but this is so and so. This is so and so. You know, I was a giddy kid even in the locker room, but trying to keep composure so I didn't seem like a mark backstage. And Eddie was just so humbling all the time. He's always come over to me, hey Bobby, how's it going? He'd just give me a hug, and he's, man, how you doing? How's it for you? He was always really, really, really just really soft, so like that, and he just seemed like he was just so, like, I don't know, not broken. He was just. But then when he came out, boom! It was like Eddie's coming out, and it was like a whole different person. It's kind of strange. But the night before he died, I saw him at I think it was at the hotel, maybe at the hotel eating or something like that. And the same thing, he just came up to me. He said, "Hey man, how you doing?" Just gave me a hug. Hey man, you doing all right? Yeah. Oh man, yeah, thanks. So the next morning when I came to the show, I mean, I think one of the first people I saw was Melina, and she was just walking by, and she was just bawling, and everything was just quiet. Nobody was kind of around. Everybody was just, and I was just like, you know, what's going on? And somebody said, Eddie died. Like, I think it was Melina that said, she said, Eddie died, and she was just crying, and she was in tears, and it just didn't seem real. It was just like, nah, no, he didn't. I just saw him last night. You know, it's kind of one of those deals. And I mean, the show that day was just, it was sad, man. It was sad. It was like everybody was, you know, Eddie's one of those guys that, you know, if he was in your life for a day or a year or 20 years, he just had that much of an impact for you. It just seemed like the guy you just cared about him. He seemed like a really good person. You know, I of course, back in his heyday, you know, there's stories about the craziness and the wild stuff and everything like that, but the Eddie that I knew personally wasn't like that. It was like very, very calm, very humbling, very, very nurturing, very just very really calm person. So I didn't get a chance to work with him, unfortunately, but yeah, it was just crazy. And then Benoit, I believe I was the last match Benoit had, because it was on Raw. It was at the draft. I wrestled Benoit at the draft, and that's when I got moved to Raw, and he was supposed to move to ECW. Me and Benoit had this. We were in Los Angeles, and Benoit got sent home for a little period of time, and the Doc at the time, I was really good friends with Doc Rio, so I would always sit back in the back, and I was talking with Doc, and I was like, where'd Chris go? And he was like, yeah, you know, I sent him home. He's like, man, that guy needed to get away. And I was like, is he hurt or anything like that? And I don't know the story, and I'm not going to insinuate, or I'm not going to put anything out there, but from what he was saying is that there wasn't nothing wrong with him. He just told him there was something wrong with him so he can get him out of there for a while. He knew Chris needed a little breakaway. And then we were in Los Angeles. It's backstage. And getting ready for TV. And I looked on the board and I wasn't on. The entire time that I'd been on, the entire time that I was on the road, I was on TV. I was on every day. And Michael Hayes was just put as the head writer, and I was looking on the on the board. And he was like, no, you're not on. And I was like, okay. He just kind of said something like, you don't need to be on TV all the time or something like that. And I was like, okay, I understand, no problem. But Chris wasn't on either, but Chris was there. So Chris came over and he said, let's go work out. So we were gonna go walk, and we walked down to the gym, and this was like a week before all the craziness happened. But I was talking with Chris, and I was like, hey man, so how was home? You have a good time at home? Because he was gone for I think a month or two or something like that. And he was like, he said, I didn't even know the people at my house. I didn't know my wife. I didn't know my son. I felt like I didn't even know these people. And I was like, and I was just listening to him, and he was just telling me how he was like, I was on the road forever, and my son's 8 now, and when I was at home, it was like I was getting acquainted with someone new. I was meeting someone new because I actually spent more time than just a day or two with him. So he's like, I just had this time with him, and it was really cool. So I just talked with him for a little while, and then after that, I mean, we went and worked out and came back, and he just seemed kind of sad, man. It was like, but I understood where he was. I think it was something where we kind of needed him on TV, and instead of staying away for a while, he's one of those guys that even if his neck was broke and he said, man, the ratings aren't doing too good, he'd be there. It's kind of one of those guys. He just loved the business. He was so dedicated to the business that he was just there. So when I talked with him for a little while, and it was cool. And then after that, I mean, that was the last. I think that was the last I've ever seen him, was that day. I think it was in Los Angeles. I don't think he came back after that, because he was supposed to be going to ECW, and he was supposed to be working Morrison for a title or something like that, and he just never showed up. And then after that, I mean, the day came that happened. And of course, as soon as we found out it happened, it was like, we found out he was dead and his family was dead, so we just started that tribute show. And then halfway through it, we found out what happened, and it was everything got cut right there. And then it was like, don't ever talk about it. Stay away from it. This is something that we stay away. But then, you know what? The thing that I hated about it is how the media is. The media is just twisted, messed up. So, of course, anything that happens with the wrestlers, they're like, oh, man, he had a roid rage and everything like that. And I was like, oh, you ever been driving down the street and somebody cut you off and you had a rage? How long does that last? That's going to last 3-4 days, a week or something like that? No, it ain't no damn rage. So when that happened, it was like, all the media was after us. They were like, man, let's talk about the steroid issue. Let's jump on this. Let's jump on that. And I was like, man, this guy had different issues than what you were talking about. This is a 3-day span that this guy ended up killing his family and then killing himself. And then you, as dumbass media, is going to come out and try to scrutinize and jump on the wrestlers about a steroid. You think it's a steroid? What about him being on the road for 300 and some odd days a year and wrestling for 22 straight years, jumping off the top rope, putting his body through hell? It's like now we're getting to the point where we start realizing, okay, yeah, when all this stuff goes on, there are some things called traumatic brain injuries that we're looking into, and then we're trying to find some a little bit more. But when something like that happens, they immediately try to beat up wrestlers for something. I mean, I think as far as professional athletes, I think wrestlers deal with some of the biggest BS that you would even imagine. And I know this because now that I fight, I see some of the stuff that fighters are doing. You think fighters are clean? You think any one of the fighters are clean, man? I think probably 80% of the fighters, if not more, are on something that they shouldn't be on. But pro wrestlers, it's an easy target all the time because of years of being under a microscope, and you've seen all these big guys out there. They want to push it on the wrestlers anytime they can. And then at the time, of course we had talks, and it's like, media is going to try to jump on you at different points of time and try to catch you off guard and ask you some questions and try to get some dirt on you. I was like, I hope they catch me. I'll talk to them anytime. Because if you're talking about that, you're talking about a steroid is going to make you kill your family. What about Ronnie Coleman? What about Lee Priest? What about some of the bodybuilders? You don't see them doing that stuff. You don't see them going crazy or anything like that. But you're going to look at wrestlers and say that maybe this is the reason why. And we're going to talk about that issue of whether who does what and when, because that's irrelevant. But you can't sit there and try to say that and try to deem everybody. There's other issues that they need to do. And I'll get back to my happy zone again. I just didn't like it at the time. You know, a lot of times, you know, we put our asses on the line. You'll never hear me in an interview bad talk any wrestler. I don't care who it is. I don't care if they suck, if they're the best in the world. I could care less. Wrestling is something that all of us that we do it, we love it, and it's hard. It's tough. You know, I fight. They ask me which one's tougher on your body, fighting or wrestling. Wrestling is, but which one do I enjoy more? Absolutely wrestling.
But like even look at action stars, they're smaller and skinny. Like Christian Bale, like they consider him to be an action star. And you look at now, I think wrestling.
But is that a problem?
I don't know.
Do we need to change? Do we need to get away from that?
I don't know.
Do you keep walking in the wrong direction? If you're going the wrong direction, you turn the fuck around and go the right direction.
Well, what do you think's the right direction?
I think you let wrestling be wrestling. You don't change it. I don't think wrestling should be changing with different genres or whatever's going on. I don't think it should change. I think it's one of those things that people expect. I want to see wrestlers. I want to see characters. I want to see like, it's like if you come to the circus, you don't want to see the circus cleaned up where nobody's doing anything outland. You don't want to sit there and say, "Oh, this is nice." You don't want to change it. It is what it is, and you don't have to change depending on the, because like I don't even know what we're going through right now. I mean, like you're talking about different shifts, like you with the '80s, the rock stars, and everything. Like, where are we at right now?
I don't know.
I have no idea. It seems like the world of reality TV is big right now, but then again, it's not. Maybe we need to have a zombie on there. I'm a big fan of Walking Dead.
Yes! I was gonna save that question.
He's just sitting to kill this damn mom, man.
Oh my god! Holy shit!
But don't talk about what's going. I didn't see the last one. I gotta watch the last one.
Okay.
So we can't say anything about that.
Okay. All right.
But we need zombies. We need zombies. Zombies are good. But yeah, man, I think what we're trying to do with wrestling right now is we're trying to figure out what it is and trying to go there, and when you try to figure out different things, you try to jump around the different fads or what's going on. I think it's a hit or miss, and I think right now I don't want to say it's a miss because I don't want to put down anybody in it because I think that there's some great matches. I think there's some great people. I think there's a lot of good stuff going on with wrestling. I think wrestling should just go back to being wrestling. I understand before, with Linda, when she was running for her campaign, they didn't want to get rid of anybody. They wanted to keep everyone because she's trying to talk about creating jobs. They can't fire a whole bunch of slugs that they don't really need. And they wanted to stay with the PG angle because they don't want to have anything come on TV that's a little risque. And then in campaign, they're mudslinging and throwing, "Look at this guy, he did this on TV." So they were trying to stay away from all that. But okay, it's over now. So let's go back to being wrestling. Shit, if somebody gets busted open, they get busted open. You're gonna have pimps and hoes. You're gonna have different characters. Let's throw it all back in there and make it be just complete chaos again, and let it go. Let some of these guys let loose and just go crazy and throw out different things and cross different barriers and I think that's where wrestling needs to be. Like we don't tiptoe around stuff. It shouldn't tiptoe around. We have never tiptoed around stuff before, so why would we tiptoe around stuff now? I mean, let's go past that race issue. Let's go past that sexist issue. Let's go past all these issues. Let's blow it out. And then I think that's the big blowout, what you're going to say, because if it's going that crazy and that chaotic, then people are going to turn on to see why it's that chaotic. And you have people in that can do it. You have to get rid of some people because some people are just too you can't really believe what they're doing, because I think right now it's like they have a lot of people that are coming down trying to be tough guys, and it's like, you're not a tough guy. I don't care what you say. You can't put a look on your face and make yourself a tough guy. It's just not there. And then characters. I mean, characters are always good, man. Stables, characters, all that stuff. This is just my opinion, and I've never run $1 billion company, so I have no idea. But as a fan, what I like to see is that kind of stuff. I like to see the what a rush, and have the crowds like, oh man, look at these guys, they're crazy, and then your stables of the Four Horsemen and different things like that, and your packs, even they can start putting those things. They can put them together. They have the people to do it. I mean, there's some great workers out there.
Well, who are the people they have that can do it?
I like Sheamus, man. I'm a big Sheamus fan right now. I think the thing I like about him is that he's different from everybody else. He doesn't look like a swimmer. You can't flash through and be like, all right, same thing, boom, because he looks different. He's pale, he's big, comes out like that. I like him. I like Daniel Bryan. I think he's just a good worker, and you can just put him in anything that you want. I would shave his head and make him burn like a skinhead Colt kind of deal, and he'd make it work. I don't know, but he can make anything work. Who else is in there? Love him or hate him, Cena's always going to be Cena. You can hate him as much as you want, but that guy is good, man. He's good. He's not the greatest athlete. Some would say he's not the greatest worker, but I've seen him in some really incredible matches. I think it just depends. Styles make matchups, and styles make matches, and great matches. He had that match with Shawn Michaels at WrestleMania. That match was sick. It was crazy. So you can hate him, but the guy is put in some time, and he's for the company. He's been around forever, and I don't want to say forever, but he's been around for a long time, and even injuries don't keep him away. He'll stay out for a little bit of time, and bam, he's right back in there. So love him or hate him, I think he's good for the company. He's a good image. He's a good face. And this ain't even saying anything good to him, try to get a job or anything like that, because it ain't even about that. I'm just telling you how it is. Some people I could care less about in the company. If I see you walking down the street and I think I can spit on you, kick your ass, and you can't do anything about it, then
who are those people?
Don't put a big title on them. You can't. I don't think you should water down the title. I think the title should be held by people that hey, this guy, like, if you're walking around, you hold that title. I think this is what I think with wrestling. I think you should take a group of people and have them watch wrestling, and have these people never watch wrestling before, and then get some ideas from them, get some opinions from them, because that's who we want. The hardcore wrestling fans are going to watch wrestling whether it sucks or whether it's great. They're going to be there all the time. They're going to be online. They're going to be blogging. They're going to have opinions because they just want to fight back and forth anyway. So those people are always going to be there. But if you want to see what you want to change wrestling, you want to open up to the masses, take a bunch of people that have no idea what wrestling is, that never even watched it, that believe wrestling is still Hulk Hogan. Take some of those people, have them watch it, and say, hey, what do you think? Who are the stars? Just let them watch it, and then get some opinion from them, and then that's how you can kind of change the game. And it's not always going to be from opinion or just a look. It's going to be, who do I believe? Who do I believe when they're coming down? Who do I believe when they're in the ring? If they don't believe it, then they're not going to watch it. If they're not going to watch it, the masses aren't going to watch it. That's what I think with it.
Well, it seems like you have somebody specific in mind who's the antithesis of not.
You want me to say some bad names.
If you don't want to, I'm giving you an opportunity to say it.
No, there's no one in particular, because I think there's room for everyone in WWE or in professional wrestling, because there are different titles. There's cruiserweight titles. There's tag team titles. There's nasty heels that aren't the biggest guy or the whatever. There's like for example, I think Punk is great. I think Punk is great at what he does. He's good on the mic. I mean, he's not 6'7" and 350 pounds, just jacked, but he makes it work. He seems like one of those guys that can come out there and he'll stab you in the back and he'll take your title from you. He looks like he can. If somebody saw him with the title, they'd say, okay, maybe he's not the picture of a wrestler, but there's something that he did that got him that title, and I can believe that. So there's nothing wrong with that. But you just can't put that title on anybody. And over the past few years, they've just, here, you try it. Oh, it doesn't fit you? Just hold it around your shoulders. Can't do it. I think that you lose what wrestling is when you start just giving it to anybody.
Speaking of titles, you won the U.S. belt from JBL. JBL is a very polarizing figure, I guess, in the locker room. People either really like him or really hate him.
Yeah.
You seem to be a guy that thinks of him favorably.
Yeah, he's cool with me. Because he keeps out the weak.
Yeah. Was there anybody that he considered to be weak that he...
Hell yeah, he thought everybody was weak. But that's what you got to do, man. You know what he seemed like to me? I don't know if you guys had a football background, but he just seemed like to me like your middle linebacker. He was the one that was like the meanest guy on the team, but he was the one that kept everybody together. So he was the guy that kind of I don't know. Before I went up, everybody kind of gave those horror stories about JBL. Got to watch out because he's gonna have you. He's gonna he's gonna do this. I never had that. Because I don't think I've ever presented myself as a weak person to him. I mean, I never presented myself as an asshole, but I never presented myself as a weak person. And I worked him in different matches, and there was times where he, Regal, Booker, all of them, they'll check you in the ring. They'll check you just to see how you're gonna react. Maybe take you in the corner, turn your head out, and give you a quick one, just to see how you're gonna react to it. But that's just the nature of the game. It's not volleyball, so it's okay with me. Some people were intimidated by him, and if you're intimidated, he'll walk right over you. So that's not a problem. And I had no real issues with JBL. I thought he was all right. I did see him crush people at times, where he would scare people out of their boots and make tag teams fight each other and different things like that. So I saw those things all the time. Like I saw when the Dicks, I don't even remember. I don't know if you remember those guys.
Tolan and
yeah,
I forget the other one.
Wicks and Tolan.
Yes.
When they got in a fight with each other, it was like you can't let somebody, for lack of better terms, mind fuck you to do something like that with your partner. If you can't stay strong then, you can't stay strong 10 years into the business when all the pressure and everything gets to you. So I think some of those times those guys were just kind of protecting the business, keeping the weak out. So it is what it is.
Well, during your time there, they did the, I guess, reboot of ECW, and then you became a part of that. What were their big plans? What were their ideas? Were you ever privy to what they had going for ECW? What did they tell you going into its incarnation or reincarnation?
They didn't tell me anything. I just had the title, and
But what was the perception when you heard that they were going to do it? Like, is this going to be the C show? Is this going to be where young guys develop their characters? I mean, what was they?
You know what? Let's not pull any punches. It was a C show. By far, it was a C show. I was happy to have the title, but at the same time, I thought that it was. I thought it was a bit of a spit in the face of the original ECW guys, and but if you have an opportunity or they put a title like that on you, you got to do what you got to do, and you got to go out there and represent it the only way that you know how to do it. So when I knew that I was getting the title, I was like, yeah, I know. I don't know how the Dreamers are going to react to it. I don't know how the Sandmans, how the Sabus, how all those guys are going to react to it. This is their baby, and they're giving this new guy, rebranded with the WWE label on it, the ECW, how they're going to feel about it. And I know, backstage or behind my back or off to the side, they were like, this is bull, this isn't, I know that was there, but I mean, what was I supposed to do? Was I not supposed to take the title? Come on, I had to do what I had to do, and I paid a lot of respect to those guys. I had to work a lot of those guys. I worked RVD a few times with it, and I was like, hey man, the match is yours, so let's just do what we can with it.
Well, you bring up the December to Dismember pay-per-view, which I guess has been referred to as one of the most infamous and controversial in the sense of how much a fiasco, I guess it was. I mean, Paul Heyman has said in interviews, and I quote, the last straw of his being fired was the December to Dismember pay-per-view. That show was just a wreck. Do you feel that that's an accurate depiction of how that show was?
Absolutely. It was like, I don't even think that was like even planned. It seemed like every other paper the normal pay-per-views have a lot. I mean, it's planned. There's some structure. They know where they're going with it. That thing, it just like, all right, let's put these guys in. Let's put these guys in. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's do this. It was cluster like. We just ran out there and did whatever. There was no rhyme or reason. It was just whatever. But like I said, it just goes back to it. If you're in that role and you have to do what you got to do, you have to do what you got to do.
It seemed like, from what I've read, is there were a lot of changes to the show the day of, and
Right
even the main
before.
event, and even the main. Well, take us through how everything changed just with your match.
We didn't. Leading into a match like that, there was a lot of egos. Everybody was like, "What? I'm not going out like that. I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that." So it was just.
Who was probably the most difficult to work with in that match?
Man, Tess was. It was. We just didn't click at all. I mean, he just did not. He was not on board with anything. Like, I had to work Tess several times, and it was like, bro, let's just go out there and fight, pretty much every time. I mean, I don't even so much want to talk about it so much because he passed, and it just seems kind of juvenile to do that now. But I mean, we just didn't. I mean, it's like in a business like that, in a company like that with that many people, there's going to be people that you don't like, and there's going to be people that don't like you. We just agreed to dislike each other, but we had to work with each other. And when we had to work with each other, it was like, hey, whatever. If you stiff me, I'm going to stiff you back. You take a shot on me, I'm going to take a shot on you back. When you talk about this, we know what the outcome needs to be, and that's all that needs to matter. And there was some tension leading all the way through our time together, and it was like, I thought at times, I was like, man, there were several times where I was like, we are just going to go out there and fight. We're going to have to go out there and fight because we're not going to get along.
So did you know for sure who was going over, even,
Yeah.
at the beginning of the day? Like, was it like last minute, like figure out who's going to win and how it's going to go down? I mean, how hectic was that? I mean, did you guys have it planned out 5 minutes before and then went out there and did it? Or
It was pretty much as guys were going out. Okay, all right, okay, kind of like one of those things, because we didn't know, and we didn't know how things were going to happen out there. We didn't know if there was a lot of different parts of the match where it was like, who's going to do this, who's going to do that. I don't think it went too bad. It was just a cluster. It was just a complete cluster. Like, nobody knew what was going to go on. I think I'm pretty sure that the plan was for me to win the title leading up into it, but we just didn't know how.
because I know, it's been mentioned in other DVDs that Heyman was really behind Punk winning it that night. And if you're not going to have Punk, then at least Rob Van Dam. And not in the sense of, Bobby's not hardworking to deserve it. It's not going to help him, I believe, is, his take on it.
I'm going to call him up, man. Because if Paul said that, I got something to say to him. I got words for him.
But I know he was very much behind Punk winning. And from...
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No, because I don't think Punk had anything to do with anything going on at the time. I don't think they really. I don't think. I can't even remember Punk even doing anything at that time. I don't think it was. They were using him at that time, or they had him in mind at the time. But I mean, I love Paul to death, but Paul is kind of one of those guys where if he talks to you, you're the greatest in the world.
Well, I'm sure.
And then you're the greatest in the world. No, you're the greatest in the world. It just depends on who he's talking to at the time. And somebody at a time said that they were upset with Paul. They're like, man, I can't stand him because all he does is try to fill you up. I was like, you know what? If you think about it this way, if somebody tells you you're the greatest, 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 you're going to start believing it sooner or later. And that's what Paul was about. I mean, like a lot of people don't believe his stuff. He's just gonna fill you up with a whole bunch of BS. So what? He made people believe that they were the greatest before, when the original ECW, he was having guys that don't even fit the stereotype, or don't even, you would never believe that they were any kind of superstar. He made them into superstars because they believed they were superstars, because he would tell them they were superstars, and if he told them enough, they would believe it.
Were you one of those guys that he was very like, you're going to be our star, you're going to be our champion, this is what we're going to do?
You know what? This is one of my favorite stories on Paul, and this is what I like about Paul. This is how I had so much respect for him. When I was down in OVW, he came down there. Now, I was Blaster Lashley at the time. Jim Cornette put me as Blaster Lashley. I was this just tough, rugged heel that was just beating everybody down, everything like that. And but there was okay, I'm pissed off at what? I'm this big jacked up guy that's just beating up people for what? It's just like, all right, I'm just a character in there. Paul came down, he started writing shows for us, and Paul called me up and he was like, hey, let's go eat breakfast. I met him down at some place in Louisville, and we sat down, we ate breakfast for 4 hours. We sat down, just chatted, bullshit, BS, joked around. It didn't seem like an interview. We were just chatting, just shooting the shit, friends, whatever. And afterwards, that's when he started writing for us. And then later on, I realized, I was like, this makes more sense than anything else, because as a writer, how are you going to write for me if you don't even know who I am? And that's what Paul did. He was like, I got to figure out who you are before I start putting a pen to paper, because if I bring you up, okay, big black jacked up guy, okay, I'm supposed to put I pity the fool, so I'm supposed to go, I pity the fool. You know, you can't do that. And I think that's what I think sometimes in wrestling, it's because we're not actors. There's not too many people that can act in wrestling. If any, there's no actors in wrestling. So instead of trying to give you a character and have you try to act that character out, do what they say, let you be you and just turn the volume up. So that's what he was trying to do. He tried to figure out who I was. And that's why my character got over really well at OVW when he started writing it, because what he was doing is he was just making like the subtle things mean so much with me. Because you don't have to have me yell at a bunch of guys that are half my size, or I'm not going to go around, I do this and I'm going to beat you up and I'm going to get this, I'm going to get that. No, you don't need any of that. Just let me be me.
Well, back to the Dismember pay-per-view. After you won the belt, you come to the back. What's the scene like? Do people feel that thank God this is over, or I don't want to be at TV tomorrow, or let's leave the building as quickly as possible? And what is the vibe?
I tell you what, I was probably so oblivious to it that I was so stupid that I didn't even really know what was going on. I thought everybody was cool and happy that I won it. Where in essence, they probably like, this dumbass. We were like, hey man, good match, thanks. Everybody jumped in the car and it was off. But yeah, probably, yeah.
Because ultimately it was the thing that led to Paul Heyman being dismissed or quit. I don't know if he was fired. He was fired or he quit. I don't know how that all happened. But Paul was no longer a part of the company anymore after that.
I got to call him up and ask him about that story. Because even after that, when he was gone, Paul and I always stayed friends and would talk, stuff like that. Even now, I've every once in a while we text each other. If I'm up in New York, call him up if he's not on the road or anything like that. So we've always kind of stayed fairly close. So, and he always kind of mentored me, when I was there, and just kind of little cues, subtle cues. Hey man, if they have you doing this, hey, you should go over there and kind of suggest this, kind of like that kind of deal. He'd always kind of been one of those guys that would help out some of us that he liked to not go down a road of stupidity. So he would kind of help us out a little bit, and he would call me up from time to time. So I don't know that he disliked the fact that I won it, but I'm gonna have to give him a call and kind of figure out where's my, and I could care less. I'm not gonna say, oh man, that's fucked up or anything like that if he didn't like it at the time. If he didn't want me to win it, I think he would tell me. And if he didn't, I'd say I completely understand. because I wasn't from the original ECW. So if you're gonna bring ECW back, even put it on their stage, put it on Rob Van Dam. he's the one. Put it on him. The whole damn show.
Now, from that pay-per-view, you actually turned, seems like your career turned a corner because now you're leading up to the build towards WrestleMania 23, and quite possibly maybe one of the biggest, stages you were ever put on at the time, for sure. Were you told, what the plan was for WrestleMania 23 and how you were figured in, and when did you first know that you were going to be in such a high-profile match?
See, that was the thing, is because too many of these guys, and I still oblivious to everything going on. Like, I didn't know it. When I was in there, I didn't know anything about dirt sheets. But I didn't realize all the guys would leave the shows and be on their phone texting, to the different dirt sheets. We had a lot of people like that in there. A lot of people that you would kind of like check them out when they're texting over and get some information of the backstage stuff, which is whatever. So I think what they try to do with the writers is the writers try to keep everything only let us know things on a need to know basis. But what I later found out is the reason why I won that ECW title is because they needed to put that title on me so that he could pick one of the champions. Because if not, if I was just a guy in the roster, then there would be no reason why Donald Trump would pick me. So they needed to put something a little bigger on me, and all the other matches were set. Cena and Shawn Michaels and all the matches were already set, so they needed somebody a little higher profile to be in that match.
So, when about did you know that you're going to be involved in this match with Donald Trump? Like, a couple months, 2 or 3 months, or was it much? Was it shortly after the pay-per-view that you were told that?
It was shortly after the pay-per-view because he was getting to that point of when they were just starting into the angle. And then when I was told at first, they were like, "Hey, Donald Trump's gonna pick you and you're gonna be in this match." And I was like, "All right, that's cool." And then I went back to the locker room, and then that's when Umaga came up and he was like, he's all like, "Hey man," and he's all giddy about it. And he's like, "Man, this is gonna be huge." And he's just going crazy and everything like that. And then at that point, I was like, "Wait a minute." And then that's when it started dawning on me. I was like, "Man, they're about to put me in a main event match in WrestleMania with Donald Trump." And then I was like, "Oh shit, this is real."
I mean, because your spot's going to get, more media attention than the other matches. I mean,
Oh,
even the title
tremendous
matches,
amount.
More than Undertaker's, more than John Cena's and Shawn Michaels.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to get some major, like you're going to be at the forefront of WrestleMania now.
Oh yeah.
And, and then of course involving Austin, when did that all come about? Did you just kind of know a few minutes before they make the announcement, or did you know that far in advance?
I knew right when they made the announcement. Everything. When Austin was standing in the ring and he had said something about being bald, and he looked at me, I looked at him, and he looked at Vince, and then we were like, "Okay, yeah, he's a rep." It just all started coming together towards the end. Then Shane jumped into it. He came into it a little bit later also.
Now, did you have any personal time with Donald Trump at all while he was there, or was he pretty much away from everybody, and the only time you saw him was as he's walking down into the ring to the spot? Or was he? Did he hang out with the guys? Did he talk to the guys?
Yeah, he did a little bit. Yeah, he was cool. The first time when I first found out that I was doing the match with him, I actually flew up to New York, and I was doing something with the CW, with the network at the time, and I was sitting in a bar, and right across the bar was his daughter, and she came up to me. This is like right when I found out. She came up to me and she was like, "I hear you the guy's supposed to be saving my dad's hair." And the way she was saying it is like she thought it was she was like telling me, "You shouldn't be at the bar having drinks, you should be out running or getting
like she
shaved."
believed it, like don't lose my dad's hair.
Yeah, so I talked with her for a little bit. And she was really cool, and then after that, talked with the Donald, and he was cool. He's actually trying to hook me up with Miss America at the time, or Miss Universe at the time. So I was really cool with him. Because he was always walking around with them. He was like, "Man, are you single?" And he kept looking at her and looking at me. I was like, "Bro, are you serious?"
Well, that's interesting because now, you're a main event player now. You're a guy. They're putting out there, and I imagine you're getting more mainstream buzz than you've probably ever had before in your entire life.
Oh, yeah.
Were there any instances where you're getting recognized more in the street? It becomes more difficult to travel in airports.
Yeah, man. I was in Times Square and there was a huge billboard of me up there, and I was actually going to buy a watch. I'm a watch collector, so I was buying a watch and I was walking down the street and all the peddlers down there on come on, in the jewelry district, and then one of them looked at me and looked up and looked at me and looked up, and he's like, "No, you got to come here." And they basically just grabbed me and pulled me in because of that. But yeah, a lot of people it was a lot of attention. We were on ESPN. There hadn't been too many times for pro wrestling was on ESPN. We were on ESPN. So yeah, there was a lot of attention to it.
How did you handle it? Were you just giddy the whole time, or just like...
No, I'm cool, man. I deserve the attention. I love me, and I think everybody else should love me too.
Well, they definitely got an opportunity to see as much as they possibly could, and then of course the match happened. What were your thoughts on it?
I liked it.
Happy with the match?
Yeah.
Happy how everything went down? Was Vince happy?
Yeah, Vince was happy. Everybody loved the match. I enjoyed it. I thought there was a lot of. I thought we had the crowd. I thought it was a good match. We got everything out of it that we wanted, and the good thing about it is, it's chemistry. As being workers, you know how it is. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're with somebody, it doesn't matter if it's a main event match of anything. If you don't have chemistry with that person that you're working, it's just gonna be one of those. But me and Umaga, we worked the first time in Mexico, and right off the bat, man, it was on. The first match we worked, it was like, there's some really good chemistry here. Like, we worked really well together. He was one of the, because I had a problem. My main problem was working with some heels, and I always say this even when I do shows now. If I work with a heel, I say you gotta be a heel. You gotta because like a lot of times, man, it's like I'll blow. I'll come in there, bounce around the heel for a little bit, and the minute that they go into the heat, it's like the crowd's like, all right, when's Bobby just gonna blow through? I said, you got to make that heat believable. If you can make that heat believable, we got these suckers. That's why the people that I worked with were great heels. JBL, shit, he will get sympathy on the baby face. Same with Finley. He's not the biggest person in the world, but you will want him to get his ass whooped when it comes for that comeback. And that's how Umaga was. Umaga was just a really dastardly heel, man. Everything he didn't do very much, but everything he did was just it was good. It was impactful. He didn't have to bump you around like crazy. Everything he did was just worked. Even some things that he did that I was like, there's no way that's gonna work. It will work. Like, guess we can go off. There was one time in the match we were in the heat, and we go to a hole, and he goes, "Oh, nerve hold on my trap," and he's sitting there massaging me, and the crowd's like, and he's just giving me a massage. He's like, "That feel good, Oos?" I was like, "Yeah, man, that's good. My neck hurts." So everything he did was so natural, and they believed it, and it was a simple match.
Now, WrestleManias are known for having big paydays. I'm sure, was that the biggest payday you've ever seen before in your life? Because people always talk about, like, I put the down payment on my house with the WrestleMania payday. I bought a Hummer with my WrestleMania payday.
A Hummer.
like anything.
I'm still living off that payday. No, it was a good one. I'm not a real flamboyant person, so I don't splurge on a whole bunch of dumb stuff. Like, I never bought a Hummer when everybody in the business at that time bought a Hummer. I would have, but I didn't. So I invested all that money. So I bought some houses and different things like that. So actually, I just closed on a house. So
were you one of the guys that got into the real estate? I know
Yeah.
a few of the guys that were in WWE.
Yeah.
They always talk about they got into real estate there because it
Yeah.
was the hot thing. Did you get out like in time, or did you?
When I first got in, I actually lost right off the bat. I invested in 14 houses in Colorado Springs. Would have been a great deal. I was gonna make close to $1 million off of this transaction, and man, it was right when it just tanked. and I just put like a quarter. I put $250,000 into the stock portfolio. That thing just took an $80,000 hit the same day. So there was a lot of just like beat me up kind of deals like right at the beginning. But I didn't create a whole bunch of expenses for myself, so I rebounded because it just sat in that account, and then it slowly came back up, and I still have the same accounts now, so everything's turned around and it's actually in the positives now.
And after WrestleMania, you begin to get into a feud with Vince McMahon, which is a very complex spot, to say the least.
Very.
You're no longer wrestling a wrestler now. You're now wrestling your boss. And very few guys have had that opportunity to do that. And the guys that have are, Stone Cold Steve Austin, Triple H, Shawn Michaels,
Bobby Lashley.
Yes. That's an elite club. What's it like being in that club? Is it nerve-wracking? Is it wonderful? Do you get to see a different side of Vince that nobody else gets to see? Tell me about it.
It was cool. Like, I was fortunate enough. Like, I was flying in his jet. He took me different places like that. I was like, he liked me. But during that feud, what was cool about it is that this is what he kept telling me afterwards. He was like, you'll get it all back. You'll get it all back. They beat me up. They beat me up a lot of times. We were just talking about it the other day. I was with Viscera in Japan, and I had to do that Raw where I was the damn near whole show of Raw. I had 4 matches that day. I had Sheldon, Masters, Viscera, and Shane. So I was getting beat down. I was doing 3 shows. I was doing Raw, SmackDown, and ECW. And they were coming out beating me up every time. I was jumping through cages, flipping over cars. I was going through the ringer at that time. And they beat me up every time. They used to hold me down, slap me, stomp me, beat me up and everything like that. But when it was time to give back, that's how he was. Like, I think I hit him with a chair like 7 times in that match. And it was like, every time when I hit him, I was like, boom, and then he would like turn the awkward way, and I was like, I'm gonna try to move around because I don't want to hit him wrong. But it was like, he was just like that, man. It was like when it was time to give it back, he was all for it. Him and Shane. It was crazy. Like they didn't have no ego with it. And you're looking at Vince at 60 years old. I'm giving him running power slam. I'm hitting him with chairs and stuff like that. Man, he's a tough old man. So it was not a problem. If he would have had me doing it to him at the beginning, I would have pulling punches and it wouldn't look as good. But no, they started on me at the beginning. So it was like I was getting my ass beat every show by Umaga, Vince, Shane, slapping me, pie facing me, stomping me, punching me, everything. So it was cool because they got a lot of heat through that whole program that we went. So when it was time to give it back, it was nothing. It was like we were right to the point of that kettle about to explode. It was like, it's time. And then when I gave it back, it was on. So it wasn't like I was hurting him or anything like that, but it had to be pretty vicious.
Well, I'm sure he was as hard as he could. And you're like, well, it's about my time to do it.
Yeah.
During that, he won the ECW title. And I'm sure that was kind of a jab at the old ECW. Do you feel like that's what it kind of was? Kind of almost like I own this and I'll do whatever I want? Like,
it was heat. He knows how to bring the heat. Like, he knew that, and that made me that, because if you look at it how we were talking before, I had that underlining heat for holding the ECW title. But now if you take it from me and put it to Vince, and I'm the person that's supposed to get it from Vince, and that makes my job easy, because now they really hate Vince.
Yeah, you're the only one that's going to take it off of him.
Yeah,
so they
kick his ass.
Yeah.
And he's coming out with a do-rag on, he's bebopping, so he's trying to get every genre out there pissed off at him, So he has all these ECW people pissed off at him. He's wearing a do-rag. He's doing all this stuff. He's a heatmeister. He knows how to do it.
and I think this happened before the WrestleMania one, but I want to bring it up because it's always a memory that I have of you that's very distinct. You were the first guy to break the Master Lock Challenge.
Yeah.
How did like? I felt like that was a big thing because they had built that for a very long time.
Yeah.
And they really spent a lot of time putting that over. And you, when you broke it, it was like, man, this guy's gonna be a big deal.
Yeah, that was again one of those things that at the time I thought, oh, it's cool, but I didn't know it was that big of a deal. Like, I have a lot of people tell me, hey, you broke the Master Lock Challenge.
Because they put a lot of time in TV putting that over. For I think like almost a year, if I'm not mistaken.
There was a lot of people.
It was a lot of people, a lot of TV time. You know, you talk about how precious TV is time. They spent a lot of time on TV putting over that, and then you just break it. Like,
I don't know if it was because he had heat at that time, or if they were just using that to really give me the boost. I know that he had some heat. I don't know if it was at that time or if it was after that time that he was really getting heat, but yeah, that ended up being a really big thing for me, because a lot of people talk about that even to this day when I have different signings and stuff like that about breaking that Master Lock. But at the time, there was so much going on that I was like, I don't know if I should have been the person to do it, but if I wasn't the person to do it, I don't know who would have been the person to do it.
Other than Cena, I can't think of anybody.
Yeah, but you can't have Cena do everything.
Exactly.
So,
and maybe that was one of the things with you is like, here's this other guy that, you know, is it's not Cena.
Yeah.
You know, Cena gets everything.
Yeah.
Now Bobby Lashley's getting something. And speaking of Cena, one of the things you got was a pay-per-view match with him.
Yeah. There was a lot of hype behind that match too. I thought, and I think a lot of people thought that there might have been a possibility they were going to put that title on me. I think a lot of people thought that.
I would disagree with that. I think there's a lot of people that did feel that way. Especially if you look at the Master Lock Challenge, WrestleMania with Donald Trump, wrestling with Vince, it seemed about that time. Do you think that there's a reason why there wasn't?
No, we didn't know. We didn't know until the day. And I'll tell you, I'll give props to Cena again on this one. Me and Cena were doing a tag match. I don't remember who we were doing it with, but babyface. Yeah, I took a bit of a heat. I think it was a double heat, big comeback. I think Cena actually won it, but what was messed up in the match is every time when I tagged him in, the crowd was booing, and when they would tag me in, they would cheer. So, and it was loud. It was a lot of. We were working someone pretty good, and we ended up winning. And afterwards, babyface's hands up in the middle of the ring. So the crowd was loud, booing and yaying at the same time, and Cena knew, and we weren't supposed to work an angle. This was not in the line or anything like that. We're holding our hands up. He goes, hit the rope, spear me, and hold the title up. And I was sitting there. I was like, no, I'm not gonna do that. He says, hit the rope, spear me, and hold the title up. And I was like, all right, fuck it. He held the title up, and the crowd went nuts. That's what started that whole storyline. He did it. The writers didn't do it. They didn't tell us to do it. We weren't supposed to do it. It was nothing like that. He did it. But I think we just ran through it so fast. Like, it was probably like a month and a half or something like that, the entire deal. And it was probably like a month. It was basically we're signing and then we're having this match. And they did interviews with a whole bunch of different superstars. Who's stronger, who's this, who's that. But they didn't really push it. They didn't build it enough to make it happen. I think because it was such a short storyline, I think that's why people thought I was going to win it. They just thought that, boom, Bobby's going to get it from him.
But even if after you lost, but you could have come back again next month, and then you could have been the heel, you could have done whatever, or they could have done all kinds of things. I mean, just having that match, and then they could have wrote whatever they wanted after that.
Yeah.
Was there any particular reason why?
I don't think that match was really in the storyline. It
wasn't something they came up with, so they didn't want it to happen.
I think that was probably the case.
if they didn't want Lashley versus Cena, what did they want from Bobby Lashley at that time?
There was a changing of the guard in there. I think one side wanted something and pushed me really hard, and then after the changing of the guard, they may have they had a different direction that they were going.
And you felt that, and you felt that there was a change.
Yeah.
And like at this time, you've been given some very good opportunities, and for the most part, delivered. Like I mean, you were on point. Like for somebody, not a lot of people could have been as successful as you were in that spot. Dare I say, anybody. Being in such a high-profile position. With Donald Trump, WrestleMania, wrestling Vince.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how long you'd been wrestling at that time, but you think about the people that got to wrestle Vince, they probably had like a decade underneath their belt. Like by the time they got to that level.
I was on the job training.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
So, how does that make you feel that you know that coming up soon you're going to be on a downturn? Or do you,
I didn't know.
Or do you even know it, I guess, is the sense. Like, did you realize it after, or did you realize it during?
I realized that it was kind of one of those things where it's like, I couldn't. It's like, I was hot, and the crowd liked me. So even if you put me on this little downturn, it doesn't matter. When I come out, the crowd's still going to have the same reaction. And they did. So, I went from main event and going after the title against Booker to like having Tatanka beat me up after a match. So, it's out of my control. You got to do what you got to do. That's part of the show. You're a character in the show. You're not the show. So I just got to play with whatever they give me.
And at this time, like who are some of the people that you're working with? Like you obviously said, the Tonka's beating you up after a match, but you just got the main eventing with Cena. Like, what was there another time where it's like, gosh, man, why am I in there with this guy? This doesn't make any sense. Like, what direction did they give you there? Like after the pay-per-view.
I asked. I said, what are we doing? And I was just told, I mean, I had that one, you don't need to be on TV all the time. It was somebody else's time. It was somebody else's time. Yeah. There's a lot of guys that are coming up in the business, and a lot of guys that were needed to be looked at, and they spent a lot of focus on a lot of time on me. So I had my shot. I had big matches, made good money. It was somebody else's time. I'm always going to be there. So that was that. I don't know any other way to explain it. I think I was hoping to do a feud with Kennedy, just because I thought that would just be fun, and that one I wouldn't look at that as a setback, because Kennedy at the time they were doing good things with him. He was great on the mic. He was that heel that talked a lot of trash that can make you hate him. So it would have been a good role for me to just go and do something with him for a little while, and the crowd would have bought it. It would have been something different from chasing a title, but it would have
You guys
still
could have come up together almost.
right. It would have been a good time. Yeah.
So. You got a big rub. You can help him. He helps you.
Yeah. And that's what I thought it was going to be, because at that time, I had a shoulder injury, and Ken actually took me out with the shoulder injury, and that's when I went out and never came back.
Now, you mentioned you were wrestling Kennedy, and you hoped that would grow and that would go someplace, and then you had the injury that happened, and you didn't come back. What are the circumstances behind that?
Well, we weren't. I don't think we weren't doing an angle with him. We were just doing that because I had, like, the whole time when I was in that feud with Vince, I had a torn labrum. So
yeah, you were banged up pretty bad. And
yeah,
needed
so
the time.
At that time, I mean, I couldn't even raise my arm above my head. So so they were trying to figure out a way to get me out, and Ken was just kind of the one that they were working with at the time. So it was something good that kind of helped his career out, that he was going to get me. And that would have been a perfect way to come back, but
yeah, he rises up, you come back, you take him out. He's at a different position.
Yeah.
Kind of
Yeah.
would have been a good thing. Was that kind of what they pitched to you, or?
No, I went out, and we didn't know what was going to happen with my shoulder, because they said that 3 months ago I had a small tear in my shoulder, so they gave me the option. They said, look, either you can do this, and ultimately I chose the angle of keep going. If it tears, and we deal with it at the time. Well, it happened, so they told me that it was going to be I was going to be out for 6 months. 6 months meant 3 months to me. I went back, and I just rehabbed like crazy, and it happened in July. It happened sometime in there, and I think around the time I was ready in December. So I called the office and said, hey, look, I'm ready. It was like 2 months or 3 months early, and I told them I was ready. I said, I'm ready. They said, oh, no, you can't be ready. They said, it's at least 6 months. We'd send you down to Alabama to get it checked out. So I went and got checked out. And when they checked it out, they said, oh, he's ready. You know, I rehabbed like crazy, so I was ready. And so I called them back, and I said, hey, you know, they said I'm ready. They sent in my paperwork, and they said, okay, well, we're going to check with the rider to see what's going on and when they can kind of work you back into things. And this is at the beginning of December. So, of course, the Rumble's in January, so I figured maybe the Rumble will be a good time to come in, or even before that, and just kind of work something coming into it. And I was told, maybe we'll bring you back sometime after the Rumble. And I was like, this is like January 1. Why are you going to bring you back after the Rumble? Because they said they have nothing for you. And that was that.
Because, bringing you back after the Rumble, then there's probably not adequate enough time to build up to a WrestleMania match. I mean, here you were the big deal at last WrestleMania, and then they're not going, and you're clearly ready to go. Like, is there something that I am perplexed, and you didn't just quit. I mean, you were released.
No, I asked for my release.
You asked for your release, but obviously, what you're telling me right here is they didn't have anything for you. How do you not have something for somebody who just got done wrestling Vince McMahon all year? I'm perplexed. Please explain it to me, how that happens.
There were some issues that were going on before that, and then that was just kind of like the last kind of spit in my face to try to say. And I was like, look, if there's issues, there's issues. Let's talk about it. But if there's not. But obviously, this is yet another dig at me for what? If you want to sit me at home and then pay me every week, that doesn't make any sense. If you're not going to use me, or if there's some kind of reason why, I don't know. It was that time. It was just that time. It was like.
Can you assume anything in particular? Some instance, maybe you didn't shake Vince's hand one day, and like, oh,
no, Vince was
well,
cool.
I mean,
I don't even think Vince even knew if there was any issues. When you're in a business like that, if you have any issues going on, you talk to the right people, and I talked to the right people. I said, hey, there's something going on. I would much rather, let's discuss this and let's find out what the issue is, and let's talk it out, and let's hash this out so there's not an issue moving forward. But instead, it's like, no, there's not no issue. There's nothing. But when you continually show me that there is, it's like, bro, this is my life. This is my career that you're dealing with. I mean, if you don't like me for a certain reason, let's talk about that. But at least tell me why you don't like me. I mean, I'm never a person to disrespect anyone. I don't care where I'm at. I don't care if I'm doing an independent show in a tent, or if I'm at WrestleMania, I'm gonna pay everybody respect the same way, and I'm not gonna come across like an asshole to anybody that anybody would have any kind of reason to dislike me unless you just don't like me. So I really don't know, and to this day I just really don't know. And ultimately it led to the ending of my career, and that was about it. But there was a lot of unnecessary jumbo that I dealt with before that I just bit my lip and just went on with. So, but if it's like you can only kick somebody so many times before they have to just say, hey, look, bro, if you want me gone, then I'll do you a favor and do it. And that's what it went out to. Like, there was, and then the only reason that, and I don't even want to really talk on the subject any, but the reason why I even touch on it at all is because I was in Japan and doing a show down there, and one of the guys that I was talking to, he was like, yeah, we were told that you were pissed off about your WrestleMania check, so you asked for your release. I was like, bro, WrestleMania was in April. I asked for my release in January. How would you even believe that story? It doesn't even make any sense. And then there was another story around that came in that I was going around and I was yelling at everybody and kicking chairs down and throwing this and cussing at everybody, and I was like, really? I said, you've known me for how long, and have you ever seen me go off on anybody? But if somebody tells you a story like that, you're gonna go ahead and believe it. So I'm not gonna go into great detail on any of the story. I mean, I can't. But it was just kind of one of those deals, man. It was a dream come true when it happened. It was a great time when it happened. I gave it everything I had when I was there, and when it was gone, it was gone. But
Shortly before your release, you became involved with Crystal Marshall as a boyfriend, girlfriend. I don't know where you stood at the time of your release. What was your guys' relationship like? I mean, in such a hectic world of WWE, like I said, you were about ready to hook up with Miss Universe, and now you're with Crystal. Like, what was that? I think my microphone picked that up. But
no, me and Crystal, we rode together for like a good year, and we were just completely friends. I mean, it was. I mean, I had a respect for her. She was with someone at the time. I had respect, and nothing ever happened at all whatsoever. We even got, traveling on the road. Sometimes you end up at our hotel room like 2 a.m. We could even stay in the same room. Not in the same bed. Wouldn't disrespect. Wouldn't do anything like that. It was just that's how we just rode together. And then it was one day at WrestleMania. She just told me how she felt, and at that time we were like, oh, that's interesting. So that's when we started seeing each other.
At WrestleMania 23, she said that, or 22?
3.
23.
And
that must have been a big day then. Like, all of a sudden.
No. I had a date at WrestleMania 23, and she had told me what the date, and then I think that kind of we were just really good friends, and she just told me how she felt about me, and then we discussed it a little bit afterwards, and then a few months after that's when we started kind of talking.
I was going to say, that'd be a big day. All of a sudden, this girl that you've been around now tells you how to feel. You're about ready to go out and have this big main event match.
It was after. It was after party, so it was after.
Well, afterwards, you're at the top of the world,
Yeah.
And here's this beautiful girl coming up to you. That's some amazing timing right there.
All that stuff comes together,
Yeah, just all pieces together like that, and then of course did you guys you obviously traveled together. I'm trying to figure out if you guys were on the same show together. Did you ever have any of those conflicts? I think you were on Raw.
When we started seeing each other when it came out, we immediately got moved on to different shows.
Do you think that was intentional?
No.
Very confident, no.
Yeah, I think it was intentional.
Okay. So do you feel that some people were unhappy with who you were dating?
I think she got a raw deal because of me, because I kind of know it was that. I even heard one conversation. It was, I don't give a damn what Bobby likes. You're gonna do what we tell you to do.
Can you go into detail and what that was that they thought that you would dislike?
I stayed out of it.
You tried
It's
to
not
be
my
you tried to
place.
be stand by your woman and do the best you could.
No, because it wasn't like that, man. I'm not gonna stand by a girl when I'm not gonna put my career on the line for somebody that when we're seeing each other for a month.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no way. I even called him up. I said, look, she's great at what she does, and it's like, please don't let anything that dealing with me have anything to do with her career.
So you were
And I even
supportive
told
of
her
whatever.
at the time. I was like, look, I don't think we should see each other because I really didn't want her to deal with anything that I had to deal with. And then at that point, she was fired. I don't know why, but she was fired. And then shortly after that, I was ready, and then there was nothing for me, and then just another dig.
Because, you talk about the story, you were unhappy with the WrestleMania payoff, like all these rumors that went around. I mean, the rumor that we always had heard from other people was that, Krista was going to be put in the position that eventually Vicky was supposed to be put in, but she didn't feel comfortable basically being what Vicky was the Edge, while she's dating Bobby Lashley. This is the story.
She said that?
No, this is what the story that I've heard, the circumstances behind the release. And I'm just only bringing it up because it's, it's internet, might be an internet rumor. But my audience pays attention to the internet, and I feel I need to ask you, whether you know or you don't know, or it's false or it's true.
I think that, well, with her, she's an actress, so she couldn't, like, she's making out with Teddy Long on TV, so
Because it seemed
it's
like that's where the story was going.
if you can do that, you can do this.
Yeah.
But I think part of the problem was that she was getting different people telling her that she was going to do different things, and some things she was like, oh yeah, that's fine, and some things it was like, is this coming here to here, or is it what's going on? So I think she was just getting played with in different angles. I think that it was supposed to be something where she was going to go and go into that storyline, and of course it's a good twist and come back on her and say that she was going to do it, but you can't really use that because it's like one of those things. It's like you can tell a lie, but if you tell a lie, look at the story. Like, why would somebody have a problem with doing something with Edge when he did something with Teddy Long? Like, you could make out with Teddy Long, but you can't make out with Edge. Come on, it's kind of one of those things. But it's always good to feed the internet and feed people different stories to make yourself seem innocent or right, I guess.
Now, from your release with WWE, I have one of the next wrestling events you were involved with was Triple Mania.
Yeah.
How did that come about? Just, here this time you went from Ohio Valley, and yeah, you did wrestle in Mexico during WWE, but
Yeah.
now you're working for a Mexican promotion, and probably 80% of the roster can't speak very fluent English.
Yeah.
What are the challenges with that?
It was cool. I went down with Conan, and he was cool, man. It was different. We were doing a 6-man tag, and I was like, when we were coming through, I was like, all right, so somebody tag, somebody. They was like, no, you just come in the ring whenever you want to. I was like, all right, no tag. It's just a free for all. It was cool, man. It was a big crowd, good money. It was, I mean, it was nothing special. I mean, It was special for them. It was a big thing. But for us, we were just coming down there for an angle because Conan was doing this deal where it was the Mexicans against outsiders, kind of. So
The U.S. probably something they're still doing today, probably.
yeah, so we just came out there and did a match. It was fun. It was different. It was a different style of wrestling, but I mean it wasn't so significant. I mean it was a one-time shot deal for me.
Well, I mean, you do this one-time shot deal. Or you've now been asked for your release from WWE. Where do you go from here? I mean, are you thinking, okay, I'll do this, maybe I'll do some other shots, just kind of here and there?
I wanted to fight.
You wanted to fight
Yeah,
right
man.
away, MMA?
Yeah, I wanted to fight during the time when I was in. I had talked with Vince because I knew that there was some kind of rumor about Vince getting into or partnering with the UFC or something like that. There was something like that at the time, and me and Vince were there, and I was like, "Hey Vince, if you guys are doing something and you need somebody to cross promote, I'm willing to fight. I'll fight if you want me to." And he was like, "Oh, you know," he said, "If we do it, we'll talk about that later." But he just kind of like was really vague with it. But when I got out, see, I had a lot of friends that were fighting just because of the wrestling background. I had a lot of friends that finished wrestling and then they were fighting, like Koscheck and Kane, Fitch. I knew a lot of the guys at AK. So at that time, I was like, I'm cool. I want to try to fight. I want to fight. I want to do a fight. So I started training. And I was still taking wrestling engagements because I enjoyed wrestling. So if any wrestling stuff, if I got called for any wrestling stuff, I would jump into it. But then I was training for fighting at the time because I wanted to do some fights.
Well, I'm sure, your name means something. I mean, you're not too far removed from WrestleMania 23, so did TNA come knocking? Did you go to them? Did you see it as an opportunity of like, hey, I can still do my MMA stuff, make some steady paychecks with TNA, or did they approach you like, Bobby, we really want you to come here?
Kurt talked to me. Kurt came back again. And that's the one thing that I regret. If I had any regrets in my pro wrestling career, is not being able to work an angle with Kurt. He's the guy that brought me into it. I looked up to him before wrestling. I think Kurt's the best. I've always wanted to do something with Kurt, and he's the one that kind of opened the door for the WWE for me, and he's the one that brought me into TNA. So everywhere I went, it was like right behind Kurt, and we never did anything with each other at all whatsoever. But Kurt called me up, and he was telling me about TNA, and then we put something together, and that's what it was supposed to be. It's supposed to be something where I did TNA, but I was able to still fight. So they knew that my main responsibility was going to be fighting because that's where I made the bulk of my money. But and that's what it was supposed to be. But when it got to the point of fighting and wrestling at the same time, it kind of butt heads. So that's where I had to kind of go my separate ways with them. But I mean, I enjoyed it over at TNA. They had a good time. There's some good guys over there. They're not as mainstream as WWE. They have more of a relaxed environment over there, but there's some good wrestlers over there, and it's a good show.
Who are some people that you liked hanging out with at TNA or
I like Samoa Joe, man.
Yeah.
He's a cool dude, man. He's a really cool dude. Joe was always really cool. Dixie was really nice when I was there. Booker was there at the time, so I hung out with Booker a little bit. And then so kind of kept it was kind of one of those deals. You just do the show and then you're in the hotel and you're back home. Crystal came on for a little while, and we ran that little angle, which it was actually pretty fun because Crystal has that natural heel in her, so she was trying to take me over to the dark side, and they were working some angles with that. But who else was over there? Kurt, of course.
You did work an angle with Scott Steiner, and everybody's always got an interesting Scott Steiner story, just because he's balls out all the time.
He's
So
awesome. I like Scott Steiner, man. He was cool. He was cool. I remember one time we were doing a deal where they did an angle where he was going after Crystal, And I remember he beat me up in the hotel room and he started yelling at me. And he was just supposed to yell at me for a little bit. But then he started yelling about my son. He was like, "That's my son. Look at your son. He's got my eyes." And I'm down on the ground trying to sell what he had. When he said, "He's got my eyes," I almost lost it. But he was always a cool dude. And you know what? A lot of people thought our match was going to be the shits. We were going into it. But I thought it was pretty decent. I had a good time working with him. I thought at the time, man. It was when I was down there. It was hard to have any emotion into what you were doing down there, because sometimes it was they have a storyline and it just led to nothing, and then it's like, all right, like they had this big build up with me and Scott. Scott had Crystal on his shirt and she was turning me heel, and they were doing all this different stuff, and then we had a match, and it was like, and then I never did anything with him again, and we were like, and he was like, "That's it?" And they were like, "Well, yeah, we're moving on to something different." It's like, all right.
You think that's one of the main differences between TNA and WWE?
I think it's different now. I think the show is actually, from what I've seen, I think it's pretty cool now. It's starting to move in the right direction. I think when I was there before, maybe it was just me. It could have been some other people, but it was hard for me to get into what I was doing or have any emotion into it, because it was just too relaxed. It was like, all right, let me do this match, and then I'm gonna go back to the hotel and chill. I didn't have any emotional attachment to anything that I was doing there. But I think it's different now because they have a lot of different things going on. I think it's a little more intense now, and they have a lot of guys they brought on, and they actually have some storylines moving forward. And they're actually planning a little further down the road than what they were doing when I was there.
Well, and you were there for the big change with Hogan and Bischoff, and did you see an immediate change of everything there, or was
I left shortly after that, so.
Well, that's right. Excuse me,
but there was a lot of hype before. They thought, Hogan's gonna come here, so we're gonna beat Raw, and some of the guys were like, "I don't know if we should move to Monday night." And then they tried it, and then they quickly moved away from Monday night. So it was they expected a little bit more out of Hogan than what they got, I think.
Did you ever meet with Hogan and Bischoff? Did they ever be like, "Bobby, this is what we'd like to do for you"? Or did you
No, I met with them at the end, when I signed this, because I signed a contract with Strikeforce around the time when they came in. So, and I mean, Bischoff just came and he was like, "I understand that you make your money with your fighting, and I understand if that's what it is." He said, "So, do the fighting stuff." He said, I completely understand that. He said, "I'd like to work to a point where we can do more for the guys, but for right now, I know that we can't do what they're gonna do for you." So, we tried to work some stuff out, but it wasn't gonna work. No.
I'm trying to remember all the details, because you mentioned you had Crystal involved, and I remember her cutting some promos several times about, like, I got this big announcement, or like you were going to leave because you wanted to do, like, almost like brought a little bit of reality, like, I want to be doing MMA, I don't want to be wrestling.
Yeah. She was coming through, and she was saying, she was telling me, the whole thing is I was supposed to have the passion of wrestling, where I loved wrestling, and I love wrestling, but she was telling me, stop doing this because you can get yourself hurt, and if you get yourself hurt here, you can't be a star over here. It's like, we don't need this, we need to get away from this. And they actually turned real instead of just being the story.
I was gonna say, because
but it would have been great, because what it was gonna be, it was gonna be a point where they had a contract and they said, no, you have to wrestle, and instead of, there was a lot of things they could have played with that. Mm-hmm. They could have played, and that was going to ultimately turn me completely heel by way of her, and I was just going to be coming in just, I have to wrestle, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and sneak people and beat people and smash people and walk out and disrespect the sport of wrestling completely and get a lot of heat that way. Mm-hmm. I think that's where we were going with that angle.
Well, you said that your angle turned into real life. Was that true? Did she want you to be doing more MMA because there's more money? Or
No. It was more money. It was just you gotta work with it. Like fighting isn't professional wrestling. You can't like you have to train for it. And that's what I said. I said the only thing that I want is I need at least a good 6 weeks of training. Like I'm gonna train the entire time, but if I have a fight, like 5 weeks leading up into it, I really have to focus on that fight. And I had a fight, and then they magically wrote me into a pay-per-view like a week before my fight. And I was like, I'm not even in a feud with Abyss, but you're going to have me do a match with Abyss in a pay-per-view? And we haven't even touched, nothing. I haven't even seen this guy. You're just going to put a match on the pay-per-view just because? It doesn't make any sense. And it puts me in a bind because I got this big fight next week. Can't do that.
Do you think that was kind of the, you were there in TNA for a very short time. So do you feel like that it was just that sense of, stuff like this is going to happen? Just kind of the disarray of it was your disinterest in it. It was like, man, like, why do I want to give myself to a company that knows clearly when I have a fight coming up that they're going to do something like this? Like,
I think it was just they didn't understand. It was a misunderstanding, and the misunderstanding went with they didn't understand the importance of fighting, because if you're with a company, you're not going to say, all right, just go do something with another company. They're going to say, no, hold on, you signed a contract with us, you're obligated to us. I understand you want to do that, but you need to withhold your obligation here first. And I think that's what it was. So it was like, I understand what you guys want, but can't do this. I got to fight. We had this talk before. We didn't put it on paper, but we had this understanding that said, at least 6 weeks leading up to my fight, you got to give me a little leeway so that I can get that done. I'll give you 100% of everything that I have, but that time I need a little space. And my fights are only going to be 4 to 6 months apart, so.
That's not like you're springing them on. They know well in advance.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Now, I don't know the MMA world as well as I know the wrestling world, and I will admit that right away. So I did as much research as I possibly could today. So if I'm a little bit off on some of these things, feel free to correct me at any point in time. You discussed you had a long interest in it, and I believe December of 2008 was either the first time you started training or you had a fight.
Fight, probably.
Fight, okay. Now from 2008 on, what were some of the hurdles that you ran into with training with MMA? And coming from, the pro wrestling world to now this. Now, of course, you have the extremely good background in amateur wrestling.
Yeah.
But I know many of amateur wrestlers that have tried MMA and it's never worked out very well. So how did you make a successful transition?
For me, it was, really, I got to thank wrestling, because if I didn't have the money to do the things that I was doing, I couldn't have made it happen. But it still hindered my fighting. For me, most guys, when they get into fighting, they have a whole training camp, like a 3-month training camp. For me, I was doing 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there, because I have kids. And for me, I don't turn my back on my kids. My kids are the most important thing to me, so I'm not gonna just stay away from them. So the most I can obligate myself to training camps for 2 weeks at a time, and then I would come home for a week and then 2 weeks here. So I was flying down to Florida, doing it here, flying different places and doing it there, and that gets really costly, staying in hotels and eating out every meal. So it was just tough. So I ultimately built a gym in Denver, and then I tried to train up there, but then still bringing in the right training partners. I was still having to train and travel and everything like that. My belief, I think that I could be one of the top fighters in the world, and I'll put that out there anytime. I just haven't had a training camp. So what I do is, because I like fighting. It's cool. I'm not going to go downtown and have a couple drinks and smash somebody unless I have to, but I like fighting. So my only problem is I was just never really prepared for any fights. I would just go out there and do them. I would just go hit meds, and like my last 3 fights, I didn't even spar before my fights, and sparring is like a big part of it. I would hit meds a little bit, do my conditioning, and then I would just go take fights. So just really haven't had an opportunity. So right now I'm just in that point of my career where I'm like, there's a couple options that I have, bigger options, some of course smaller options, but by the end of this year I'm gonna make a a real decision what I'm going to do full time. And if it's fighting full time, then I'm going to stay in camp all the time, and it's just going to be training and fighting and training and fighting.
Well, obviously I maybe not fully understand the whole political game of pro wrestling. Like if you do this and you get high profile matches, and then you get a tryout, or you do this, or WWE notice you this way, or you do dark match or talent. That's how you get it there. I know a little bit about that, but not very much. But I know nothing of how someone like a Bobby Lashley can turn into the next Brock Lesnar, the next Randy Couture, the next Mitch Franklin, or Nick Diaz.
It's the person that you beat.
Is that what
all
it is?
I mean,
But how do
you
get booked?
could be absolute nobody, turn around and beat somebody, and you're automatically a somebody. The mind of the memory of an MMA fan is like a pro wrestling fan. Like you could be in a losing streak forever and beat Cena and get the title, and they're like, you're the greatest wrestler ever lived. That same thing with fighting. Randy Couture does not have a good record. I mean, he has like 10, 15 losses or something. Like he doesn't have a great record, but he's beat some people throughout his career, and he made a name for himself. And that's the same thing with fighting. Like I can turn around. Like right now, one of the organizations that's really pushing is Bellator, which is kind of interesting because Bellator, Spike TNA, Mo's doing it. King Mo, they brought him on, which he's on the other way. He's a fighter that wants to be a pro wrestler. I mean, there are opportunities there. So that's something that I have to consider. But it's if I go over there, you're in high profile matches. You're fighting right people. And if they put the right person in front of you, you smash them, you win. I mean, that's really how it is. It's just your last match. That's the only thing that really matters.
Well, how does the politics work for you to get those good matches? I mean, on this list, I mean,
Money.
you were scheduled to wrestle Ken Shamrock in that
And
match.
he failed a drug test.
And then I've got you fought Bob Sapp.
Yeah, man. Everybody talks about Bob Sapp. Like, I have so many people say, hey, man, you beat that big old Bob Sapp. Bob Sapp, I like Bob Sapp. He's a good friend of mine, but Bob Sapp was more on the... He wasn't my toughest match. He was a big guy. He weighed in 100 pounds more than me, but I mean, take him down and punch him a few times.
But you say money, is it money in the promoter, or is it money? I mean,
it's putting asses in seats. It's just like pro wrestling. Like there, it doesn't matter how good of a fighter you are. It just matters if you're running a promotion, and you can have Joe Schmo that's just a great fighter, backyard fighter, great jiu-jitsu, great everything like that. But nobody's gonna buy tickets to come see him. But they'll buy tickets if I go and fight. And that was one thing that Brock, some people, whether you hate Brock or like Brock did big things for UFC. That's why they're indebted to him. When Brock was on pay-per-views, he was doing million buys. They don't do numbers like that with no one else. From Anderson Silva, GSP, none of them do buys like that. Brock does. So there was a couple interviews that I had when different people were like, oh, forget Brock. I was like, you know what, stupid? You're on a card with Brock, and Brock has 1 million people watching, and you're on the undercard, you're on an earlier match. You're going to have 1 million people see you, so you're going to build up fans, you're going to have better sponsors and everything like that, so he is good for the business. And that's why anybody that cross-promotes or comes into fighting, it really does help out fighting.
So it's mostly ticket sales?
Ticket
sales and stuff like that. I mean, the sponsors...
Because they don't care who wins.
Yeah, well, it's whatever you can promote,
Yeah.
So, what can we expect? I mean, some of the probably more high profile matches that come with Strikeforce. It's being a novice of MMA, it's at least a promotion I've heard before from time and seen some other stuff. What are some other promotions that you work for, and how does contracts work in MMA? To be quite honest, are you exclusively with one promotion, or are you a free agent?
I'm a pro wrestler, man.
Oh.
I'm a pro wrestler that fights. So I'm going to continue fighting until I get my shot back into pro wrestling.
So is that your focus, to get back into pro wrestling?
Yep.
Can we expect anything from Bobby Lashley in the future, wrestling wise? Hopefully.
Hopefully. And I'm just going to keep fighting until I get it. And that's what I've been doing this entire time. Like, if the fighting fans don't like what I say, I could care less, because those are not my fans. I enjoy fighting. I have a gym, and I enjoy helping fighters. And I know that I'm good at fighting, and I know that if I was able to give 100% of everything I have into fighting, I could do some really big things. But right now, my focus is I enjoy pro wrestling. And if pro wrestling was completely taken away from me, then I will fight full time and I will make it a career and I will rise all the way up to the top. But in the back of my mind, if a pro wrestling offer was ever brought to me, I will take it.
So still, even though the money is probably pretty good in MMA and it seems to be the thing that is exploding, you'd still rather
Yeah.
be involved with
Yeah,
pro
I could probably make more money fighting and have more home time and less responsibilities, but I would still choose pro wrestling.
Well, what are the roadback blocks that you see on your way back to pro wrestling, even to the main stage of WWE? What roadblocks do you see in front of you? You seem like a type of guy that's very calculated, has a plan on how to go about it. You know,
I think I just got to kill the right people.
you just gotta kill the right people.
No.
Do you mean that in the MMA sense? Do you mean that in the sense of MMA?
And I got to beat the right people in
You gotta beat the right
MMA in
people
order
and
to open up
kill
the
the right
right
people?
doors to be.
Not the sense that somebody is blocking you from your return and you need to kill him. I
No.
most certainly would not want to put something like that on videotape.
No, I joked about that. I don't, I don't know. I think that everybody just didn't know what I was doing on both sides. Like, nobody wanted to put 100% faith in me because they're like the UFC is like, does he really want to fight? And I think in pro wrestling they were like, does he really want to pro wrestle? Because in this interview he's talking about fighting, and in this interview he's talking about wrestling. It's like, I love both. And which one do I love more? I love pro wrestling more. But which one am I willing to do? I'm willing to do either one. I have kids, I have a family, I have a gym full of at-risk kids that I pull off the streets, and right now we have hundreds of kids over there. I started a foundation just for these kids to keep them off the streets. I grew up with nothing. I know how it is, and I've seen so many lives changed in my gym that I'm putting my body on the line in order to keep this thing going for these kids. So if it's fighting, I'm going to fight. If it's pro wrestling, I will pro wrestling. I'll enjoy either one that I do, so it really doesn't matter. But I mean, it's always like, which one do you want more? I like pro wrestling more, but I am completely willing and able and will dedicate myself to fighting if that's what it is. But at the end of this year, I'm going to make that decision, which one I'm going to have to do and focus my attention on 100%.
Well, Bobby, I am extremely happy, and it's been a pleasure to be sitting down with you and talking to you. I didn't expect this interview to be go off as well as it did, and I don't mean that as a knock to you. I just didn't know you personally, and now knowing you a little bit better and talking to you for almost nearly 3 hours, which I would have not guessed. So just a little under 3 hours, more like 2.5. But I got to see a side of you that maybe the WWE didn't explore as much, and I feel very happy that I got to experience that, and hopefully I think the people that see this video in DVD format or download feel the same way, that they got to see a very good portrayal of you and get to know the type of person you are, and you seem like, and I can tell you are a wonderful individual, and you do a lot of good things with what you made in pro wrestling, where a lot of times we do a lot of interviews with people that don't do a lot of good things with pro wrestling, but you did. And I thank you for taking the time to talk to us and talk to your fans and the people that are interested in your career. So thank you. And just, do you have anything to say to the people that might have purchased this or saw this and, thought, I didn't think this about Bobby Lashley, but now I do, or in the sense of, I've always liked Bobby Lashley no matter what. What do you have to say to your fans?
I don't know what to say to them. There is going to be more to me. I disappeared for a while in some people's eyes, and there's going to be more. Of course, Twitter is a place. Fight Bobby is a place that they can reach me and just kind of follow and see what I'm going to do. But whatever it is, I'm going to do it big. January is going to be that whole new year for me, and I'm going to make sure that it's something big, regardless of what it is.
Well, thank you for your time once again, Bobby, and